Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Are you a brewhead? I'm a brewhead. Y'all are brewheads? Yeah, we brewheads. So pour a glass of craft beer, we can do this. Yeah.
What's good, y'all? This is C-Certified Brewhead.
And I am Tiffany, liquid enthusiast.
Welcome to episode 139 of Beer Educator, the podcast. We are in the building, and no, this is not a link-up episode. You seeing Tiff? See the link-up?
I come for everyone's special, but I come for certain ones.
Yeah.
I love everyone equally.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
But
They know.
There's just some that I gotta be a part of. So here I am, okay?
Just out here.
Just out here today for this, because we're doing something really, really fun.
We
and
are.
I would have too much FOMO if I missed out on it. And I really wanted to hang out with this person. So here I am, guys.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I respect it.
I'm having suspense here. I'm building suspense for you.
You are. You are
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. So you guys might remember we did an episode with Michelle Tham back on. I should have had this before. I looked it up the other day. It was earlier this year. Episode 110. Wow, it even like pre-populates. That's awesome. And if y'all listen to or watch that episode, that was a beer education episode. We were focusing on that one on on the Cicerone side of things, like the beer serving and tasting and the whole kind of experience. So what we're doing tonight is like an unofficial part 2 to that on the flip side, on the brewing side, and getting a little bit more detailed on the beer ingredients and sort of how it all works. And we've even got some props here. I don't know if we can call them props. They're real things. They're not fake. But something that we just haven't done before. This is completely different for us. And like Tiff said, this is super fun. I'm very much looking forward to this. So please welcome Beer Educator, Kim Lucas. In the building.
Oh, yeah. Love that laughter.
Love that. Kim, welcome. So nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
It is a pleasure. Like I was saying, this is very cool. This is something different. We connected recently through someone who we work with in our agency, your closest friend, Ria, who is a gem of a human. So shouts to Ria for making it happen. And we had a chat. We met up yesterday to get all this stuff. And this is going to be super fun. There's a lot of synchronicities in just the fact that you have a personal relationship with Michelle from our other podcast I was mentioning before, which is even cooler, completely unintentional from what we tried to do here. So tonight is going to be fun. Let's get the first beer going, and then we'll get into your history, and then we'll do the full tasting, because the pod is going to be separated into 3 parts tonight, and you'll see why very shortly. Shall we kick off the first one?
All right. Yes. So the first beer we are going to taste is Bench Brewing Company, their Lincoln Lager.
Hey, go.
Thank you.
Let me hold that up to the screen so you can see. There we go. Crispy boy, the best way to start off. So I don't think I've had this one. This is a 4.4 lager.
Yep.
Tell us about this one.
All right. So this one is probably their most easy drinking beer. It is a Helles style. So
okay.
Just really nice, big, bready aromas. We've got a more subdued hop in there, classic of that style. So just going to get a little bit of those kind of herbal hop aromas as well. But yeah, just really nice, easy drinking, pretty simple, not a ton of ingredients. We will get to that a little bit later, but just something nice and fresh, and refreshing for the first one, I guess. So
I
cheers.
love it. It's perfect. Cheers. Oh, just on the photo. Get that in you. Nice. Okay, Helles. Do you know the hops in it?
Yep. So we use our Centennial hops. We actually have estate hops, so a little.
Oh yeah, of course.
So we've got a nice hop yard at Bench, and we have estate Centennial hops. So we actually try to use those in the various beers that we brew as much as possible. And then we've got a Saphir hop in that as well. So that's going to provide that really nice kind of like herbal hop aroma, like a light citrusy note as well, but very light on that. But yeah, so those are the two hops in this one. This is a malt forward beer, and we'll get to what all that means
Yes.
in a little bit.
Perfect.
But so we're really going to see that malt sitting in the front seat of this beer, where that hop is kind of just like a nice little subtle note, but it really just adds to the beer. So
Love it. Yeah,
yeah,
this is fantastic. It's perfect for this. So, like we were saying earlier, we're going to break this up into three sort of segments: malt, hops, and yeasts. But right before we get into like a more in-depth tasting of this beer, Kim, can you just like break down your personal history in beer, like how you got into beer, the various places that you've worked, yeah, all those different things to just sort of give people an understanding of sort of how you got into beer education.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it was quite the ride. I think I have a lot of interests, so I had a science degree from university, and then I did a public relations degree, and then did event planning for years. That's where I met our mutual friend Rhea.
There we go.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you start saying event
So was
planning.
in that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we traveled the world actually together, the two of us. So had an
That's
epic
awesome.
job, but then met my husband, decided that maybe I want to stick around a little bit more, so not travel as much. So I loved beer. I went to high school in Montreal, and like it was Coors Light everywhere. Everyone was drinking Coors Light. You go to any party, it was full of Coors Light, and I was always that one being like, okay, what else can I get from the dépanneur, you know?
Yeah.
So I'd go and I'd go and I was the like idiot that was like, oh, we're gonna play beer pong, and I'm gonna bring Fin du Monde, which is like
Oh no,
9%. I
9%
can't even
triple.
remember. Like,
It's
yeah,
9.
I
Yeah.
was like, yeah. So I wanted to dabble in different things and try
Dangerous.
different things at that point. But I don't know if you guys ever heard of like, oh, what was that beer? It was like a beer and like juice. It was like called, oh, Tornad. Have you ever like heard of that? It was the most disgusting. I think it was like gray in color. It was disgusting, but I was trying. Yeah, I was trying to like try different things, but like the accessibility to like good craft beer was not great for what, like, I don't even know how old I was in
Yeah.
living in a smaller town. So yeah, so yeah, I had some questionable beer taste, but then moved to Ontario for school, for university, and things like that. And then it just became a little bit more accessible to try different things. So started really getting into it, and more and more that I thought about it, I was like beer is perfect for somebody that has a science background, is into like events and being social and like that PR world and everything. And it kind of just like all fell together for me. So, I had these big dreams. I was like, I'm going to open my own brewery, like every, every person that's like, oh, let's do this and whatever. So, I applied for Niagara College, and for their brewing program. And then, was successful, got in, was super, super jazzed to do that. I'm definitely one of those people that likes to go all in. So I didn't want to just, learn about beer. I was doing my Prud'homme at the time. So I was, I needed to know everything. I needed to know how everything worked. So I went to Niagara College, learned a ton about like the business of beer, making beer, of course, all that fun stuff. So I realized after a lot of my friends had opened their own craft breweries and all the time and money they put into it, I was like, maybe I'll go work for somebody for a while and, get a paycheck. So that was kind of how I started. And while I was in school, I was working in the tap room and in events for Great Lakes Brewery. So started off there.
Okay.
Started off with some awesome beers, obviously, like solid IPAs, like really great learning environment. So yeah, that was great. I worked there during school. And then I got an offer to work at Junction Brewery. So they had an opening for a brewer. So I obviously was like, let's do this. I had graduated school, so I was ready to jump right in. So I worked for Junction Brewery.
What year was
they
that?
Ooh, damn, with the years. All right. 2017 or 18, I think it was. Yeah. So
Okay.
I worked, I worked for Junction, and then, so I was brewing on the floor, and then we kind of made, or I kind of pitched an idea of we're doing a lot of contract brewing. So I then took on a job doing, I think I called myself the contract brew liaison. So basically managing all of those, making recipes for certain contract clients, basically all the scheduling and all that stuff, procuring of all the ingredients, all that fun stuff. So did that for a while, and then got us an opportunity at Mill Street Brewery. So then I was at Mill Street for 4 years. And I think I had 4 different jobs in the 4 years. I am definitely one of those people that just wants to learn all the things and learn more and more. So started doing more kind of almost like working in the brew pub system. So still staying in that like kind of craft innovative space. So really just like getting involved with that, doing some more procurement stuff, some admin stuff, some various tasks, and then getting more involved in like the innovation process and like scaling beers up from the brew pub level to like mass production, but like a larger scale production. So I got to work on various different beers. I got to make some beers of myself, which was really great. One of my favorite beers that we actually got to make was my buddy Thomas Madsen. We went to school together at Niagara, and we worked together at Mill Street. So we decided to make we made a watermelon wheat. Like it was like one of our first homebrews we made together while we were at Niagara College, and we brought that to the brew pub, and then we scaled it up, and it was I think 3 years. We sold that beer, and it was in our mix packs and all the fun stuff. So it was really cool to see the evolution of that beer. Like it was really, really special.
Awesome.
So yeah, so that was really fun. We got to work on a bunch of different beers for different I worked with Lemon, the drag queen, to bring back lemon tea. So that was an initiative that I got to work on, which was really great. It was kind of one of my and my colleagues' like love child. We were obsessed with Drag Race, and we really wanted to do something great for Pride. So everyone was hounding us to bring lemon tea back. So yeah, basically that was a really fun thing we got to work on. And then we also got to work on with the LCBO with their Spirit of Inclusion initiative. That is what it's called. We got to work on a beer for that as well. And I don't know if we want to get into that right now, but we can chat a little bit about that as well.
Definitely.
But then, from there, I then kind of pitched a job for myself, really interested in education and teaching people. I love learning, so I love teaching. And honestly, I just love to nerd out and talk about beer and all things beer. So I kind of pitched this brewing and education specialist role. And then from there, it actually developed into a manager role. And I was doing all the education for all our staff at all of our brew pubs. So traveling between Toronto and Ottawa, doing all of that fun stuff. I did some internal things. Then, pandemic hit, and I was doing a bunch of tastings online, you name it. So it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience. And, just talking with people about beer all day. I mean, what's better? So you guys know.
That's awesome.
Yours is full time though, so it's more interesting. That's cooler.
Yeah, we're just on the adjacent thing. We get to talk to cool people like you who do it all day long.
That's awesome.
Okay, that's dope. And then so you were and that's where you worked with Michelle, I imagine, because of
exactly.
Yep. Amazing.
Yeah, so Michelle's really great, and like she's an amazing storyteller. She comes from a culinary background, so she's like really good at the beer pairing and stuff. So like she would tell the story, like it's like honestly you just want to like melt into a puddle when she talks to you, because she's like so like she's just so awesome. And then I would like approach it from like the brewer's perspective, really be like, okay, this is like how we build beers. We did like build a beer session with some of our like licensee like our customers. So we would be like, hey, come on, we can come brew like on our pilot system, and we would make like really cool beers that they would like make as a team, and I would help them build that beer, and we'd go through all the ingredients and stuff like that. So there's like some cool stuff that we did for sure. And yeah, Michelle is wicked, definitely a mentor of mine. So it's
awesome.
It's cool that you guys did one with her as well. So
yes, and you used to
bring
do
the other side.
which is so perfect.
Yeah.
And you were doing tastings and sort of educational sessions together with Michelle. Is that right?
Yeah, we did it we did it like like she was obviously leading some of the things. We did a bunch of like videos and things together for like education purposes. And then we went to Ottawa and like tag teamed it for the Ottawa team there too. So yeah, it was really cool.
That's
Yeah,
dope. So
really
that's
great.
hence why this is like an informal part two to that, since you guys already work together doing these sessions where I imagine she would talk about the pairing and maybe tasting, and then you would kind of talk about more the how it's made side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a little bit of that. Yeah, and she's got the hard job. She's got to figure out like how we make all of our servers and things like care about
I remember saying
care
that.
about the beer and care about like why we should, in her words, give a shit. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was yeah, it's kind of cool. Like she's got the hard job. I can just get to talk about beer.
That's
So
awesome. And then you moved to Bench, I imagine, somewhat in the last year or two.
yeah, I think I
Yep.
started in May of this year. So
Oh,
yeah, it
okay,
hasn't been
fresh.
too long. So yeah, so doing a little bit of a different role. Kind of back to those procurement roots, but managing the procurement department and also doing all the planning. So lots of Tetris, I call it. So lots of tank shifting, planning basically all the brews, making sure things come in, things go out, all that fun stuff. So a good challenge, definitely a good part of the business, just more on like on the operations side,
Gotcha.
which is fun. Yeah.
Okay,
I
that's
love
awesome.
that you work
Yeah.
in different areas. It's
Very
kind of
cool.
even something we try to educate people on in terms of for our other project, Link Up, where we're trying to let it be known really like, hey, just when we're talking about like you can get opportunities in craft beer, it's not just you brewing. There's so many other things that you can do, on the finance side, on the operations side. Like it's a cool industry, and we can be in the industry without having to actually make the beer if that's not what you want to do. So I love that even you just saying these things, like there's so many fun and different opportunities that you can have within it, which is very, very cool.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, procurement and planning and, if you're organized and things like that, like honestly, a lot of my skills that I had from my, event background are like translatable, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy. And then, we're always like I've worked with so many folks, and like even when I was at Niagara College, a lot of us were in our like second or third careers. So we all have kind of like a base of all these different things that are so translatable into like the brewing industry. So it was just like you bring yes your education of beer, but you also bring all of your other expertise. So like a lot of folks can hopefully feel like they can get into the beer industry, and not feel like it's too like, oh my gosh, I have to have a degree, or oh my gosh, I have to have, education, formal education and things like that. Like I work with a ton of people that learned on the job and things like that. So yeah, I mean, we want more people from all different backgrounds, because that's what's going to make us a diverse company, a diverse mindset. If we all just said, yay, it's not going to challenge us. We're not going to make strides. So yeah.
It's boring. Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
Right.
Very important to do that. So I love hearing that other companies and different people in the industry are working towards that as well, which is great. So thank you so much for breaking all that down. Now, we didn't really talk about what we're going to do tonight. So you've curated a series of beers, and obviously beer is primarily made up of 4 ingredients, 5 if you want to include cotton candy, I guess, or cheesecake, cereal, yeah, donuts,
Reese's Pieces,
yeah, all of that, highly fun. But if we simplify it down a little bit, malt, hops, yeast, and water. So obviously we're not doing any water sommeliering this evening.
I thought that would be interesting.
It would be fascinating. I think that's a hyper niche episode, but
I know. Got my tap water here, so
there you go. It's important. You got to balance. So obviously we're drinking a lager. Lager's a malt forward. So the first segment it would be malt, which is sick. So however you want to go about it. Do we need the ingredients? Should we go through a bit more of an in-depth tasting of this beer, or however you want to run it? We're ready.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do a tasting of the beer. So make sure our beer doesn't get too warm over here, because you want to enjoy your lagers nice and cold. So basically when I run through my tastings, usually I show you how to pour the beer, but I'm sure you guys are experts at that. But yeah, we'll show you on the next one. But very important to pour your beer into a glass. A lot of people don't know, obviously the carbon dioxide is released out of the glass and into your nose, in your olfactory senses. So really helps get those aromas of those beers and the aroma of this lovely beer. Let's take a nice sniff. We are getting a lot of that kind of bready note, bread and kind of crackery note, I would say. This beer itself has some two-row, so basically our base malt, and we'll talk a little bit about base malts and all the different kinds of malts as I go through this. We'll actually taste some too. We'll make you snack on some of those goodies I got you. So we've got, of course, that really nice bready note, a little bit of that toasted bread note. There is a little bit of that,
a bit toasty.
a little bit of that Munich malt in there too. So a little bit of that kind of like bread crust / a little bit of a toasty, crackery kind of note as well. There's also a little bit of, so there's that Saphir hop that we use. So a little bit of that herbal kind of hop characteristic, maybe a touch of citrus. So you'll get that on the nose as well. Then in terms of smelling techniques, there are a couple different smelling techniques, if you can believe it. We're going to tell you how to smell. So when we do judging, things like that, sometimes you're just doing so much, and you're getting nose blind, or let's say, your beer is really cold, or let's say, it's a very delicate aroma, something like a lager that this is. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that if you are trying to smell the beer for tasting purposes versus drinking purposes, you want to maybe warm it up a little bit so you can release a little bit more of those aromas. CO2 actually, as beer warms up, CO2, carbon dioxide, does not want to be in beer above a certain degree of temperature, so above 5 degrees Celsius. More CO2 will actually get released from the beer. So as it gets warmer, the more CO2 is going to be released, the more aromas are going to go into your olfactory senses, and you can experience that beer in a better way, because actually 80% of what we perceive as flavor is actually attributed to aroma. So very important. So if you block your nose, my mom always said this when I was young. She's like, if you don't like it, block your nose and eat it. And I'm like, I mean, fair enough, because you can't taste it as well. So she's a smart lady. So very important to smell as you drink and experience that beer in that full way. Okay. Also really good if you're eating, or if you just don't feel like getting bloated, when you pour that beer into a glass, you're actually releasing a lot of that CO2, getting that aroma, as we said, but you're also releasing it into the atmosphere instead of going directly into your stomach. So this tiny little hole in the can, not much can come out of that little hole. So you're actually just drinking a ton of gas. And if you think about most beers, like 2.7, 2.5 volumes of CO2, that's a ton of gas you're putting into your stomach. So if you're trying to eat at the same time, you won't be able to eat as much. You won't be able to drink as much. And especially when I was teaching my staff, it was like, we want our customers to obviously eat and drink a lot, right? So in the restaurant business. So, but even at home, you want to enjoy your stuff. You don't want to feel super bloated. So really important to pour it into a glass. So that's always something that I like to state. I know a lot of people know these things already, but always something to reiterate, because it is very important.
I feel like I see way too many people drinking out of cans. I'm always telling people, get a glass, bro.
I know.
I bust ass on that. It's just more you're doing it in the proper way. It was more just you kind of experience the beer, I don't think, out of a can.
You have to see it too, right? It's there's something where you need to see it, and you get all that scent coming to you, and you don't get that. It's like drinking wine out of a bottle. It would be so silly. So it's except Heineken's, because it's okay. You don't need to see it.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Or Corona, so I feel like I get it. I'm just here to.
It's a different intention.
Yeah.
Yeah, different experience.
Yeah.
But I did pass over that. You segued it perfectly. So the appearance of the beer is actually very important too. So when we are pouring into a beer, people drink with their eyes. So when you see a nice beer across the way and you're like, oh, that's got a nice head on it, looks very attractive, you're gonna want to order a beer. That is just very much how we are as human beings. If it doesn't have a head on it, maybe you're thinking it's flat or it's a cider or something like that. So, we do really drink with our eyes. So, if we do take a look at our beer, we're seeing it's, a nice kind of pale yellow, maybe even just a tiny bit light gold. The clarity should be quite high. It is a lager filtered style. And then this one's been sitting a bit. We can rouse it a bit and get a nice layering foam color on that beer as well. So we want it to have that nice foam color so that we know that it is not flat. We know that it will be nice and carbonated when we go drink it, which we will do next. Take a sip.
There we go. Cheers.
Cheers. And I always say when you're tasting, always taste it and then taste it again. Very important, because like, especially if it's your first beer of the night or the day or whatever you're doing, it's important to like acclimatize your mouth and the pH of the beer. So take a sip and then take another sip, and then we can assess more the flavors.
It's interesting you said that. I find that I always I believe it's misperceiving beers as more bitter than they are on my first beer, regardless of the style. And I've said that a lot in the reviews. I'm like, tastes really bitter right now. And I mean, obviously I'm drinking the whole thing, and I typically review it in the beginning of the beer so then I can just enjoy it afterwards. And perhaps that's a flawed system, being that the temperature changes, the beer changes, so on. So sometimes I go and address it, but yeah, I always find that perceived bitterness is an issue. So one way around that would be is it like coating your mouth with, like, swirl it around or something? Is there a way around that?
I would say, like, yeah, drink, take a sip, and then do a little bit of, moving it around in your mouth a little bit, swallow, take another sip, and then see like if that does change it. It is very much because it is adjusting pH. It's your body, it's your mouth getting used to what you're putting into it. I actually feel like I have the same response. Or sometimes if it's like overly sour or overly, like, at first shot, you're like, whoa. So like whenever you tell somebody to, like, hey, I want you to taste this beer, you're at a restaurant, you two are out for dinner, and you're like, taste my beer, like, always taste it twice. My husband always is like, why are you drinking all my beer? And I'm like, no, I have to taste it twice.
It's important.
But really, it is important. And I used to, like, it was so funny because I used to do like homebrew competition things, and we'd have like our little tasting booths and things like that. And all my friends would be like, I'm here, give me your beer. And I was like, absolutely not. Go drink like other beer first, and then come to me, because I want you to experience the beer once you've like acclimatized. So, and then you'll get the full perspective. Yeah.
Drink other beer, are you saying that, like, go drink some macro or something like that? Like, are you talking like,
no, I just mean like, no? Yeah, I just mean like, go drink, obviously don't like kill your palate on something crazy, like go find a lager or go find something that's like beer pH or whatever. So yeah, just to like start low and slow, and then kind of move into, I always made some funky beers, so it's like, go taste something first, and then come taste my like guava goza or like whatever it was that I was like making people drink. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good to know, because I always kind of thought it was just me a bit. No one had ever really. I guess I haven't done too many of these type of situations. I just always thought, I guess it's just a part of the game. You have the first beer, it's a bit weird, than all the rest of them are, but it's good to know it's actually just a thing. Like, it is just a part of it. Yeah.
And tasting it twice.
Yeah.
So I'm going to always pay attention to that, because I think I only do that when I'm like, ooh, I kind of like this. What's happening? And then I taste it twice, maybe. Like, if someone says, try it.
Yeah.
If I like have a beer, then I'll always taste it. I'll drink it twice or sip it twice. But yeah, I think like now when you say like, hey, try this,
which I often do.
Like, cool.
Yeah.
But then I should
100% of the time, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Actually, unless you're right, unless you really like it.
Yesterday when you gave me that stout, I was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. But I like that. That's good to know.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so when you are tasting this, there are a couple, like, I mean, you can obviously taste it, swirl around your mouth, do that. Like, integration of oxygen is also good for getting those little flavors. So there's also like the retronasal technique, which I'm not sure if you guys have done much of. So when you, so you like take a breath in, and then you take a sip, you swallow the beer, and then you breathe out through your nose. So make sure that you swallow before you breathe out your nose, or else you're going to have a hard time and beer everywhere. So breathe in.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I do a really annoying thing, and people probably hate me when I do beer judging, but I like take a sip and I make that annoying noise. Because I find that it helps like integrate oxygen a little bit, and I can get a little bit more sense of like what those delicate flavors are, especially when it's something like this that doesn't have a lot going on. It's a very like subtle aroma and flavor, right? So you really want to get those notes. A lot of people say that when they do the retronasal, they'll get a lot more of those nuanced flavors and aromas, which is kind of cool. And sometimes you'll get something completely different on the retronasal that you did on your tasting. Like, it's so cool. So practice that at home. That's your homework.
I feel like everyone will be down.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it is kind of like this Hella style is a little bit more like I'm more of a Pilsner drinker, let's say. So a German style Pilsner, a little bit more of that bitter side of things
Hmm.
for a Pilsner style. And so this one to me is like, it's got that really kind of sweet, bready kind of upfront
Yes.
note. It is still very like refreshing, and there's like, a little bit of that balanced hop bitterness, but it's mostly that grainy, bready, toasty, white wonder bready kind of note. And then on the like finish, it is still quite nice and dry. Like it is still, a lager. It's going to be nice and dry and crisp. And, we want people to drink a lot of this. So we want the finish to be nice, quick, clean, crisp, and then move on and have another sip kind of thing. So that is kind of this beer in a nutshell in lagers in
Dope.
general. A lot of different, lighter, paler lagers, let's say. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. I like
Mhm.
doing this stuff. I was like, this is what we were saying to you yesterday. Like, I feel like there's probably a lot of people who are watching and listening who have, had thousands of different beers. But how often do you don't think about it that like you think about it and you maybe Untapped or like I do little reviews and I know there's a bunch of people who do that, but like this type of tasting and like a technique, or that thing with wine where you lean forward and you like suck back on like a white wine, like it like turns it around in your mouth so then it
Mhm.
releases some like things like that.
Yeah.
It's cool
Mhm.
just to like be like, oh yeah, you could probably try that, and there's things that maybe a lot of, like you could integrate into your regular beer drinking just to get a bit more of, you do it even if you're among friends, just to through your
Yeah.
own head what you're drinking a bit.
And probably makes you slow down a little bit too, and then you enjoy it a bit more because you're like really taking it in for that first
It's a
period
good point.
instead of just like sipping and be like, cool, and I'm just drinking. But if you take a second, you get to like appreciate it more. So I think that's cool because then I like stopped and really thought about what's happening in the beer.
Mm.
Mhm.
Doesn't
Yeah.
always do.
No, for sure.
Okay.
All
Cool.
right. So
So
do we
then,
want to try
oh yeah,
some malts?
do we ever?
So I got I made our lovely brewers help me with this. And they got some different malts for us to try. So when we're talking about malts, this is our malt forward beer. Obviously, malt is the first thing you're going to taste, the first thing you're going to smell. That is what is going to make up the majority of the flavors that you're going to see in a malt forward style. So it is coming from malt. Malt. What is malt? Malt is a lot of different things, but the main malt and the malt that we have here today is barley. So it's made from barley. So barley goes through this malting process. Basically, they take the barley grain, they soak it, and it germinates, and then it basically starts to sprout like a little plant. And in doing that, it creates those nice starches we need for the sugar that we need to make beer. And then basically gets dried out. So from there's a couple different ways that we can kind of manipulate malt, or the maltsters do this for us, and it just shows up in nice bags for us brewers. But they do all the hard
Just
things, and
turns up. Yeah.
yeah, and then it just turns up like this. So we don't have to worry, about a lot of these different things. But yeah, so there is four main big groups of malts, and so the base malt is the majority of the malt that we use in a lot of beers. Base malts in every single beer. It is the one that has the most sugars. For us, for the yeast to convert into alcohol, so very important. We
Very
also
important.
have kilned malts. So kilned malts are basically dried malts, and they're dried at various temperatures, various times, and they can really range in color in that way too. So where the base malt, similar to Lincoln Lager, is going to give us those bready kind of notes. The kiln malt is the other malt that is in the Lincoln Lager, so that more that toasty note. Okay, so
Okay.
Okay.
more of that. It's been it's been kilned for longer at a little bit higher temperatures, so it's got more of that toasted bread, like literally like putting bread in your toaster. So think about it as like that. And then there's crystal or caramel malts, which are my favorite because a lot of my beer style, a lot of my favorite beer styles have them. So crystal malt's really cool because you actually like soak it or stew it in water, and then some of that sugar gets extracted and it surrounds the outside of that barley kernel. And actually, it is then heated up to high temperatures, and the sugars from that barley malt actually crystallize on the outside of the barley malt kernel itself, which is really cool. And then roasted malts. are, more of that dark roast. So they actually go through roasters similar to like coffee. So a lot of people equate roasted malts with those flavors of coffee, dark chocolate, things like that as well. So today, I brought you guys some two-row. So that's, I think it's all labeled there for you. So two-row is our base malt. Okay. So two-row is the base malt that we use at Bench as our base malt for all beers. This is actually, like, a lot of people don't really know that this makes up somewhere like 80 to 100% of a grain bill for most beers, because this is the main sugar source. All that it's been done is that it was germinated and then dried, and that's it. Okay. So there hasn't been manipulated in any other way other than basically creating those starches and then dried. Okay. So what we're going to get is basically the most basic taste of the grain out of this malt. So you can actually like just go ahead and snack on some. When we have busy brew days, we don't eat lunch as brewers, so we just snack.
Oh man,
this is actually pretty nice.
Isn't it cool?
It's like crunchy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really crunchy.
It's like popcorn, but malty.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of tastes like those, like, Jamaican, that malt beverage. That malt drink.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about, Kim? They're like malt beverages. I don't like them typically, but they're like
the tonics.
I guess you could call it a tonic. It's almost like a soda, but it's like malt soda.
The taste.
Like a malt.
Oh. Malt is like malt forward drinks, or just malt drinks in Jamaica are very popular.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you could get like, I remember there was some sort of like a Milo thing, like a Nisk. I don't know if people know Milo.
Oh,
but
yeah, Milo. Yeah.
It's every country tries to claim it, but it's Australian, so it's ours.
Really?
Yeah, all Colombians we had you in when we moved.
Like, it's a Jamaican hot chocolate, and he's like, it's Australian.
And there's that
prove it, and then went to Wikipedia, and I was
like, it's Sydney in like 1920 or something. And then we went to school in Montreal with the dude who was from Colombia, and he called it Milo and said it was from Colombia. I'm like, my guy, no. So I remember like there was a similar.
I grew up in Asia, and I grew up in Malaysia, and I also thought it was Malaysian.
No, there you go.
That's hilarious.
That means it's actually kind of cool that they've made a product that every country has sort of adopted to the point where they thought it was theirs. Yeah. That's actually really smart if you think of it from marketing. But anyway, I guess my point was there was a similar thing to Milo that I recall. Excuse me, kind of like Ovaltine. Do you have Ovaltine here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think there was a malted version of Ovaltine. I never liked it as a kid, but I feel like now I really would like it. And you could get malted milkshakes, and they would add some malt stuff. Like if you just went to milkshakes wherever in the 80s and 90s, so like you could get a milk. We drank a lot of milkshakes, and you could get malted versions. So I feel like it was like a common thing, maybe in Commonwealth countries or something, and that would probably include like Malaysia, like around that sort of region, and Caribbean probably. And this is very reminiscent of all of that, because it's probably, my guess, it would probably be these base malts that they would make it from.
Yeah, likely. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's actually really good.
Like
I love it.
It's a good snack.
I know.
What's the calories on it is what I was wondering. Can dogs have barley? I think so, right?
Can dogs have barley?
Yeah, they can eat. They eat bread and like all that other stuff, right? Like, they can have grains. It's totally fine.
Just one.
Yeah.
Barrington's here, so it's going to give Barrington.
Barrington's in. He wants some snacks.
He's yumming it up. Okay, this is honestly, this is like not even just. This is like delicious. Like I really enjoy it.
Like this is a great snack.
Yeah,
I feel like I was gonna be eating these all night.
You can. I was like, I don't know how much to give you, but I'm glad I gave you a bunch. So
this is great.
Bring it upstairs to the office.
So,
He's not interested. He's not interested in the bar.
Oh, yep, not a beer.
And he's like, "What's this? This isn't liver."
Look, Bear. Look, we're having it, buddy. Anyway, sorry, Kim.
Yeah, sorry.
All good. Yeah. So basically, what is very bready notes. So there's like maybe a little bit of like crackery notes there, but really just pretty simple. Really good base for a lot of beers, and it does have that like the most sugar. So definitely something that we want to use for a sugar source for our yeast to make alcohol.
Oh yeah.
And
then two-row. Is it worth asking the question before we go to Crystal? I know that there's like the row on a two-row. It's something to do with like how many. Like if you look at like a little kernel of barley or whatever, and it's got little two things, on the side, and then there's like 6-row, which has like a different sugar content, and maybe there's a 4-row or something. Is it worth briefly touching on those things in this segment because 2-row is in that world, or is it better to talk about that after we've gone through the others?
No. Yeah. So basically all malt that we use like today, this is all like 2-row malt. So it is that malt that has the 2 rows in the I don't even know, I can't think of the word, but anyways, there's 2 barley malts per row versus like 6 on a barley, like I'm going to call it a stem because that's where we're going with my brain right now. And and basically a lot of like the difference between like a 6-row and a 2-row is that 2-row has like a lot more starches than a 6-row. 6-row has more enzyme to help break down sugars and things like that. But it really, when you're thinking about like bang for your buck, you want to do obviously more sugar source versus less sugar source, even though there might be a little bit of more enzymes on that. Also, there's a little bit more protein, I think, in the 6-row too. But most malt that we see, like, and I think it's almost all malt that we see like on a commercial scale is going to be that 2-row variety. We just call, like, people can also call this like pale ale malt. We just call it 2-row because it's like the basic. It's basically like 2-row. So we just call it 2-row.
All 2-row at the end of the day,
yeah,
basically.
So it's all 2-row type barley that's been manipulated in different ways. Yeah, so we don't really use 6-row, and I don't know anyone that uses 6-row. So
I've heard of it once or twice. Like,
yeah, like you always hear about it, like in the in like when you're learning about barley and all that fun stuff.
Right,
but
then, in reality,
I'm sure there's a purpose for it, or somebody uses it somewhere. But in terms of like what we use the 2-row. But yeah, so that so the 2-row is basically just plain, just been dried, base for everything, good sugar source. And then, so that's going to give us our bready background, like all basically beer is liquid bread, as they say, and all those fun things. But so you want to make sure you have that nice base. And then we want to start, like, as we get into different kind of malt forward beers, we want to layer on different flavors. So, we're talking about, that kiln malt. So the Munich malt that's in the Lincoln Lager, just to give it a little bit more complexity, a little bit more of those like toasted bread flavors. We get into the caramels for like more, our amber lagers, our Viennas, our ESBs, things like that. So a darker, more richer caramel. And there's huge ranges in all of these. So kiln malts will go from, really lightly toasted to like really dark toasted. And like that segueing into like our dark roasted malts here. So we have our brown malt. So this is a not a roasted, kilned. It is a kiln malt. So when you go into the kiln, it goes in, it looks like this when it goes in, it dries up, and then it can end up like this. Okay. So this is basically how like toasted they can get in the kiln space. So if we want to taste the kiln brown,
do we ever? See if Barrington wants it.
Whoa!
Oh damn!
What a difference!
It's like
different,
bitter,
right?
Yeah. Whoa! It's like eating a coffee.
Like dry.
It's like
or like cacao or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is very toasted. It's like on the brink. It's like when you take this toast out of the toaster, it's like hard as a rock.
Oh my god!
I know it's a lot. So you can imagine, like, people are always like, oh my gosh, like when you make a brown ale, like this is the only malt you use, right? And you're like, no, you use a ton of this delicious malt, and then you put only a little bit of so a bunch of the 2-row, and then you only put a little bit of the like up to 20% max of the brown, right? So you're not going to layer a bunch of that, because you guys, I love your reaction because it's perfect, right? Like, whoa, what the heck? You know what I mean? So malt we're looking for. There's not as much extract in this because it's been manipulated, because it's been kilned. Like, there's not as much of those readily available sugars. And then it's going to change the color of the beer, the flavor, and the aroma. So there's a lot of different things that this is going to provide. So if you're going to make a brown ale, brown malt.
Stout?
You know what I mean? Things like that, right? So yeah, you could use brown malt. In stout, you really want to, there is a little bit more laying depending on what kind of stout you're making. There could be kiln, there could be a little crystal, let's say, and then roasted malt, which unfortunately we don't have today because we're not in stout season yet. So we didn't have any carafa or anything for me to grab. But the next level, like in like a roasted grain would be like, you guys, I would wish I had it because you would have been like, oh my gosh, it was just basically like it is roasted to almost like combustion. So it is like it's very pliable. Like it basically just crumbles in your hand. And then when you taste it, it's like very like it's eating like a coffee bean kind of thing. So it's like very stringent, very roasted. But there's like obviously like a scale of that too. So we have like light chocolate malt, and then we've got like all the way to like the really dark stuff like carafa and things like that. So there's a scale in all of these different things, and it's so crazy because we say like, okay, there's 4 ingredients in beer. Malt is one of them. There's pretty much 4 different kinds of malt. That there's such ranges in all of them, right? So you can do so many beer styles with just like an ingredient, but the range is huge, right? So super, super cool to like dip into all of that. Okay, so you didn't like that one as much. Okay.
I have a better feeling.
Not snacking on that one, I would say.
Okay, so the next one, yeah, maybe you'll snack on the other, yeah. Okay, so this one is Dark Crystal. So
this is
we talked
midway.
about yes, so Dark Crystal is that crystal malt we talked about. So it has a little bit of that caramelization on the outside of the kernel. Careful of your teeth. Sometimes they can be really hard because of the caramelization. Okay. You might like this one a little bit more, hopefully.
Definitely better.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like a slightly toastier version of the two-row.
Yeah.
Like the OG.
But not as like nutty, sweetie like with the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that's okay. So like this two row, like,
a
little bit nutty. This one, so a little bit more of those like caramel, like dark toffee notes. This is Dark Crystal, so it is on the darker side. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we're looking at like a little bit lower crystal, like C15, Z20, those numbers are just it's what attributes like the level bond, so like the color of it, so how caramelized it got. So the lower ones are going to be a little bit more of those like caramel notes, things like that, things that you'd use in like Vienna lager or an amber ale or things like that, right? So this is more on the dark end because this is what we had available, but it is got a little bit more of that like sweetness, caramel, toffee ness to it. So a little bit different of a malt there. So I mean, these are just 3 examples of all the different malts that there are, but there's like a huge spectrum. Yeah, so we manipulating all of these different things in our beers to create different styles is what brewers do. Like they're like literally like little chefs. We're chefs that create different flavor profiles and put those all together. So malt forward beers are obviously we're tackling the malt flavors. We're using malt flavors, manipulating malt flavors to create these various malt forward styles. So that's kind of the malt of it all.
I love it.
But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That
so
be snacking on these 2 rows and bring it to the office and just kind of like
Just rock that all day.
sit here and walk. Yeah.
I'll
We're
drop
gonna put these brown malts for.
Those brown malts can.
Make some bread with that or something. This is delicious. So the malts in. Did we talk about the specific ones in this beer? You probably did in the beginning, but just to reiterate, now we've gone through it.
Yeah, for sure. So the malts in this one we are using 2 row. So these lovely snacky guys. Oof. And then a Munich malt. So a Munich malt is just like it is a kiln malt, but it is definitely less kiln than these brown malts. So on the lower scale, more of that toasty bread malt. So
Gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
So just like honestly, if you taste those and then taste the beer, you'll see that like that bready note and that toasted little bread note is gonna very much translate into this beer. And then I actually I know we're gonna transition to hops next. So I think I gave you guys the Saphir hops, and that's the actual hop that's in this Lincoln Lager. So you'll notice like when we smell this versus when we go to our IPA hops, it's going to be very different. So if you want to like crack open your bag of Saphir hops,
smell that.
Oh, I love hop smells.
Are they the
I
best?
love them.
Oh my
Sorry, are
goodness.
these hops from Bench?
Yeah.
I know Bench has a hop garden.
So these ones are, yeah. So some of our state hops, like we will harvest those. Our hops are still growing on the vine, so
Okay.
we will very much use the hops when they're ready to go. But these are just commercial hops for now.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And you can like take your little hop pellet, squish it in your hands. Usually when we do hop rubs with like cones, it's a lot easier to like rub in your hands and get those all that beautiful lupulin like on your hands and just get right in there. With the pellets, you can do this. You can do the same. Rub it all together. I just like to break it up a little bit. So you can just take the little pellet, squeeze it. So that might be a little harder than others, just depending on their moisture level, and then you get a really nice kind of like little crumble in your hand. And be careful when sniffing. You don't want to go right up the nose because then you'll be sneezing all night.
Oh,
Yeah.
fair enough.
But yeah, so you'll notice that it's like very subtle of a smell, right?
Yeah,
So
it's
like
not
I'm sure you've
crazy.
smelled like a bunch of different things, and we will smell some really way more aromatic hops. So this one's going to be a lot subtle because it is a malt forward beer. So we do not want the hops to overtake the beautiful malt flavors. So we're going to just add this. It's a Hallertau Saphir, and basically it is just that kind of herbal note, very subdued compared to some of the other ones we're going to taste. So basically,
Gotcha.
we want that malt to shine. So just add it in for a little bit of bitterness, a little bit of that flavor note, a little bit of that aromatic, and then yeah, but it's definitely not the showstopper. So those are kind
Gotcha.
of the difference. So we have we have various different kinds of hops, and we can kind of roll into the hops right now
Mm-hmm.
if you guys fancy. We can also pour our hop beer if you fancy on something else. I don't know how far you are with your lager. You're all good.
Oh yeah, just knock that down. Yeah, I got that. Props.
Perfect.
All right.
right.
So this is fun.
Okay, so
Let me turn around
all
there.
right, yeah, we're gonna
Alrighty.
smell like hops.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the next one we have is the Bench Hills Hazy IPA.
Boom.
Yeah.
There she is. Come on. Come on. Hey, Bear. Barrington wants some. There you go. Beautiful. I think I had
Beer
this
dog.
one of the last times I went through Bench.
Oh yeah.
But I haven't had it out the can before.
Oh, you're gonna tell us how to pour though, right? Or
Oh yeah, let's do the pouring
so-
thing.
It's a good pour.
Pouring. So you basically pour about 3/4 of the way up the glass on a 45-degree angle, and then you pour directly straight down the middle of the glass because you want to get that nice head. You want to release those aromas. And I've
That's what
got
I've
this
been doing.
like
That's good.
this lovely Spiegel glass for
Yes.
IPAs. I love that.
Those are the best.
A little bit of an IPA or a glassware nerd, so I
Oh,
love
I
that.
feel
with a
that.
little foam on that.
I had 4 of them and I've only
Really
got one
small.
left. They keep breaking. They're so thin. So I
Oh,
didn't
okay,
want to
no.
bust out. I had to have matching glasses. So
It's always a sad
the-
occasion.
well, these are
when that
New England
happens.
IPA glasses, but
Yeah.
I feel like the Spiegel ones
Yeah.
are the money zone for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
What's your
they're-
opinion, real quick, on the rousing of the yeast at the bottom of the can and then adding that in, particularly for, say, I know that differs per style, but say for haze, which is a New England IPA. So
Yeah.
we'll take it from.
I mean, I generally, if it's not like a style specific, wheat beer, I don't generally do it, but I mean, to each their own.
Yeah.
Fair enough for haze. I mean, you're hoping that the haze is stable enough that it'll stay in solution, but that's not always the case if you have an older product, things like that. So, typically I don't want to do that because you're hoping that you get. I got my beer like directly off the line today, so
Oh, nice.
that's not too bad. But I know not everybody gets the chance to do that, so do what you can. But yeah, if you like it a little bit more hazy, if that's the case, then absolutely do what you will. Teach their own.
Beautiful then. Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, so so this is more of that like hazy New England style. Obviously, hops are just, there's such a vast like array of hops. Like people say, "Oh, I don't like a hoppy beer," and like that makes me cringe every time because I'm like, "What does that mean? Like, what kind of
Yeah.
hops don't you like?" Things like that. Especially when people say like, "I don't really like an IPA," so and that hurts a little bit because there
Yeah.
are so many
'Cause
different
they're wrong.
kinds, right? So because they are wrong.
That's really what it comes down to.
So
They need
I really
education.
like
Yeah, they just need
no,
the education.
absolutely, and
Well,
like
it's IPA day
that's
today, according
Oh
to
my gosh, happy
is
IPA
it
day. Look
just
at
happy IPA day.
according to that.
Cheers,
So like, you know, how dare anybody
that.
speak ill of the style?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, like, in learning with it, with, talking to our staff and like educating the staff is that like a lot of people, some people don't like the bitterness of an IPA. Great. Some people don't like those big, like American hops, the Cascade, Centennial, Chinook, those big bold American hops that are those like citrus, grapefruit, pine. Pine is very polarizing for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say like, I don't like IPAs because maybe they had a West Coast IPA and they were like, oh, there was just something in there. I don't know what it was, but I did not like it. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm glad that you've recognized that you don't like that, but don't discount all IPAs because then there's something like this beautiful beer where we're using a lot of New World hops. So New World hops being, of course, like more of those like tropical fruit notes, those fun ones from, Australia and New Zealand and Motueka and Galaxy and Big Secret and all those goodies. So, there is such a wide range of hops. So don't kind of discount a style because of maybe a particular example that you've had. So it's really important to know what you like, so that when you go to a restaurant, you're not going to order West Coast if you know that you don't like those pine notes and things like that. So education is super key when, like educating yourself so that when you go somewhere, you have a good experience too. Right. So,
Yes.
so I think that's like super important. So when we do look at various different hops, I mentioned American, New World. There's also, English for more English styles. There's also German and Czech hops. So, they go from anywhere like the Saphir hops that we just smelled, those kind of like herbal and, a little bit spicy notes, to some of these hops that we're going to smell in this beer, which are, next level, totally different. Right. So,
Right.
So if we want to do a little bit of a tasting on this guy,
Let's do it.
so we've got this like lovely kind of goldeny color. It's nice and it's got a deep haze, as I like to say, and then it's got a nice foam color on this one as well. The malts in this one, we do have our base malt, of course, and then there is like oats and wheat in it as well. So the proteins in both of those are going to really help bump out, first of all, the haze. So make it nice and hazy. Also, it's going to give us like a little bit more mouthfeel, which we'll see, and then also will help with our head retention. Like you think about, proteins, like barley has proteins in it, but when you're adding a little bit more wheat, a little bit more oats and things like that, you're just adding to that. So you're hopefully getting that head retention. If you have that head retention as you are drinking your IPA, those hop aromas are just going to blast you in the nose every single sip. And that's exactly what you want when you want to experience an IPA, right?
Damn right.
So, yeah. So, really important. And also, with the body note too, because you're adding so much like bold, flavorful, aromatic hops, you do want to have a little bit more of that that malt kind of backbone too, to kind of like balance it out. So it's really important there. But this is definitely a hop forward style. So we will do our little tasting on this guy. So deep haze, foam, we talked about. Let's smell it.
Lots of tropical fruits. Kind of like mango, bit of citrus.
Mm-hmm. So when you smell a beer, and I mentioned a little bit about this earlier, there are different ways you can smell a beer. So you can do that like long kind of inhale through the nose. You can kind of like flood those olfactory senses with that aroma. There's also something I like to call the dog nose sniff. I don't know what other people call it, but I love calling it that because I'm slightly obsessed with dogs, as you guys know. Like... so you guys basically do the like short little sniffs in into your nose. So, and that can kind of like integrate oxygen as well as those aromas.
I like to do it to Barrington.
He just always does to our dogs. It's just so funny.
Let's go right up to him. He says, "What are you doing?" And he just does back. It's so funny.
Oh my god, that's really cute.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, I'd love
So
to
you
hear-
do that,
He'd get a good sniff of this.
and then
what's happening?
Hey, bear. It's okay, buddy.
it's nice when you're tasting an IPA too to my beers were not in the fridge, so we consumed the Lincoln Lager like right away. That's always good for a lager. The short tails, I do like to let it open up a little bit when I am doing a tasting, just because the warmer it gets, the more aromatics it comes, as I mentioned
Gotcha.
with the CO2. So kind of let that warm up a little bit. Take that nice sniff, do whatever technique you like. Also, if you're having trouble, you can always put your hand over the glass, give it a swirl, and then stick your nose right into it as well.
Oh, I have seen
And that
that.
helps.
Mine's way too full for that.
Yeah, mine is
but
so full. That's why
Take
Yeah.
a sip first and then
let's
so
see.
yeah, so really getting so the new world hops are really going to get those nice like peach, mango, stone fruit, a little bit of grapefruit notes on the nose.
Yes. All the above.
So
Yeah.
just like really nice ripe mango. Yeah. So a lot of those like tropical fruit notes you're going to get out of that, which is some of my favorite hops are in this. So really, really beautiful tropical kind of fruit notes.
What
and
was
then
the
we
breathing?
can,
Was it called retro nasal breathing?
so retro nasal is basically like, so
Yeah,
when we're tasting it. Yeah. So when we taste it, breathe in, take a sip, and then breathe out your nose.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I just couldn't remember the name of it. That's a fun technique. I think I'm going to do that. I guess that what I did was when I sipped this one, holding my breath, I did a little burp, and there's nothing better than hot burps. I think hot burps are the best, and I like to exhale them through the nose. So
Honestly,
it does. I guess it's sort of like unintentionally achieving the retro nasal thing, because that's what I was doing. I guess. I don't know why. I think I just like accidentally do it. Sometimes it just hits you, and then you don't even have time to open your mouth to let her out, but it just comes out. You're like, "Ooh, that was fire!" Like, but now it's technically like a technique.
You could definitely
you can just
Maybe
I'll try to.
Yeah.
You guys have to be able to do it on command. I'm like, that's what you have to work on.
That's next level.
Yeah, hilarious.
Oh, this is money. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, this is really good.
Yeah, so so a lot of those similar flavors when we have our sip and we burp it out our nose or whatever you're gonna do.
I'm gonna try every time.
Yeah, and you'll notice the body of this obviously is a little bit heavier, like it's on the heavier side compared to the lager we just had. I always like to, when people are not really familiar with body and what that means, like a lot of people have trouble with that. I'm like, okay, if you're drinking like water and then you're drinking milk, the heaviness in your mouth is going to be a little bit different. I do tell people to go back to the lager and taste the lager, and then I usually start with the lager and then go back to the IPA and like get a feel of how that feels in your mouth, literally mouth feel, how it feels in your mouth. Another thing with this is because we've added all these like beautiful wheats and oats and all these things, it's kind of have that really nice kind of like smooth mouthfeel. That nice carbonation is also like more smooth and a little bit more like prickly. So that is just going to create like a really beautiful smooth mouthfeel. And then it kind of like smooths out like the bitterness that is there. Obviously this style is more about the aromas and the flavors of the hops and less about the like bang you in your face bitterness. So it's another reason why people, if they don't like, if they're saying I don't like the bitterness of an IPA, it's like, let's put them down the New England style path and see how they like that. And then if it's still too much, then maybe like go down to a session New England and then try to take them down a path like that. I think when we're doing our education for staff and like when we are, thinking about how we want our customers to experience our brand, it's super important for them to have a really good experience, for them to be knowledgeable. So like, we have everyone from like somebody who's never tasted beer before to, Cicerones and things coming in and, wanting to ask detailed questions. And there's nothing better than having an excellent server, somebody that knows what they're doing, somebody who knows, what these different things are. If, I come in and I say, oh, I drink, Coors Light or whatever, you know what I mean? You're not going to give them an IPA, right? So there's like various things there too. So really knowing about those different, techniques and using, the tools that they learn and curating that experience is really going to make people like come back too. So that was like really fun to like kind of teach and like run scenarios and stuff like that. Be like, oh, I like this and blah blah blah, and then what would you recommend to me and blah blah blah. So yeah, it was like it was really great. So
I think that's so important. Like that experience that you're saying, it's like someone needs to be able to know, like, okay, I'm not gonna give you this beer. Let's try this instead, and really talk to you and understand, like, what do you drink normally, even if it's not a beer. What type of wines do you drink normally? Because then maybe that's something that you can align to. So that education's like critical, actually, to like the success and sales of the brewery, right? Otherwise, if the server's not able to really like make recommendations, and someone's like either doesn't like the drink or is just like, okay, well, I guess like I'm just not gonna have a beer or something like that, and I'll just choose something else, and that's not really what you want to happen. So the education part is so powerful, and like making sure that the servers, like, that's also just a good experience when someone cares about what you like. Even there's a cafe that we love on College called Voodoo, and because the espresso drinks that we have, they just taste better with like the espresso beans that we have are like, well, technically we drink oat milk. Oat milk tastes better with like
dark roasts,
chocolatey, vanilla, that type
nutty.
of nutty vibe. And whenever you have it with something that's like more floral or fruity, it just doesn't have the mix. And I love, like, Voodoo will always be like, all right, what's the blend? What's the coffee roast that you want? You know, or like, what are the beans that you want? And we had another cafe called Cafe and Gamba in Montreal, and just depending on what milk you were having, they just immediately were like, okay, this is like the bean that you need to have with this. Like, it's just like taking that extra step to really appreciate what makes the most sense for the customer, and I love that. I think it's super important.
100%. It's like customization almost in some ways.
Yeah.
It's like, it's awesome, and everyone loves customization. Think about like when you're little and you're like, ooh, I got that keychain with my name on it. You know what I mean? You find your name, go through the thing, like, you know what I mean? People love when things are tailored to them, right? Like that's just special, and you have a great experience.
We both have keychains with our names on it.
There you go. See,
our friend's like 7-year-old daughter's business, and we're like, oh, we're all getting keychains and stuff like that.
I love that.
But
that's
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
What was I going to ask?
Did we talk about the malt in this one? It was
from the beginning.
Because you said base malt.
Yep.
And then
oats and wheat.
And then
oats and wheat. Yeah. And then there is a bit of dextrose, so a non-fermentable sugar, just to give it a little bit more body too. Yeah, just to kind of like when you are putting a bunch of different like aromatic and flavorful hops, we do want to have that little bit of that malt backbone to kind of help balance it out. So we can actually like go to our hops that are in this from your little baggies. Yeah. So we do add so Centennial is a big of our bittering hops. So we do have Centennial in this one as well as our bittering hop, Beanie Boyle. And then at Whirlpool we add in Azaka. And that's just because it really brings out a lot of that kind of like fruity, juicy kind of notes when we add it in the Whirlpool.
Wasn't there an Azaka, or did I miss
Azaka? Yeah, did you get Azaka?
Yeah, there she is.
You got it? Yep. Perfect.
I knew it was there somewhere.
All right. So yeah, you can give it a sniff in the bag.
Which one should we sniff first?
You should do Azaka first because that's the first that we add in process. So we'll smell that one.
Yeah, let's go. Sniff that.
We'll break it up a bit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely more fragrant than the Sophia.
And the Sophia, right? Like it's so
I didn't
crazy.
realize Sophia was that kind of vibe. I thought it was kind of like like this. Okay.
It sounds like it would be, but
it's got a cool name. Sophia's a cool name.
Yeah, so if you think about like the melange of Azaka, Amarilla, and so you like, go ahead and like sniff some of the other ones. Break them up a bit. A little bit harder to break up sometimes.
Oh, you're going in. You got a real spliff there,
I know.
It's legal.
Get a little grinder. I know.
Yeah. Right?
When you go do like hop rubs and stuff, when you're doing it from pellets, they'll give you like these little grinders.
Really? You're like, guys.
Yeah, I'm like,
that's so funny.
I'm gonna take this home.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Hilarious. Yeah. So we've got like a bunch of awesome like various hops that are gonna give us like a ton of different aromas. So we do dry hop with the Citra and the Amarillo. So like really what we're looking for here is I get like this kind of canned canned kind of like off the beer, like a lot of translates into like a canned pineapple, like mango-y, citrus, peachy, stone fruit vibe from all of these different things. And like, yes, you can smell hops. And you're like, okay, I get a sense of what this is about, but then where you use it in the process too can really make a difference. So as Zaka, they say, like, if you use it in the whirlpool, it's going to give you more of those like fruity, juicy fruity notes.
Hey.
And then with our Citra and Amarillo dry hop, really trying to like bring out all this melange of those like kind of tropically citrusy, stone fruity kind of notes all together to create like this beautiful bouquet, which is on the nose, which we already experienced. We already got all of those lovely notes, especially the mango. I'm getting the mango a lot right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Man,
So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, Citra is a funny one too.
What's your favorite hop? Do you have a favorite?
Oh, good question. I mean, I do love New World hops. I think that's probably like I really was into Motueka for a long time.
Oh,
I like
so
Galaxy. Yeah.
Galaxy's a little patchy. Dude, like Troy from
know.
Badlands was saying, there was like a whole bunch of like bad Galaxy batches that kind of ruined Blaze
Yeah.
for a bit. So I feel like Galaxy
Yeah.
was incredible, and then something happened, and I feel like I heard the story and I forgot what it was, but something specific happened to Galaxy to make it. It was like just inconsistent or something.
Oh yeah.
Unlike
Yeah.
some of
It
the
could
other
be
ones.
growing
I feel like the New
conditions, all
Zealand
those
hops.
things.
Yeah, because I feel like the Aussie hops were like the shit, like around the time you were saying you started beer 2017, 2018 and further. And then all of a sudden, like New Zealand just came through with like, Rakau, Rawaka, Mateka, like all this shit, and they're just insane. Like insane. I feel like I agree. Mateka's got to be one of the best. Do you know what's the most my favorite hop? And the most fronted on or slept on hop is Idaho 7.
Ooh, yeah, we use Idaho 7 at Bench. Yeah, I do like that one.
Love it.
Yeah.
I feel like
another
this
one I
year.
was into. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was saying like another one that I was super into. I went the like Bar Bruges, like the French hop.
Oh, the French one, the strawberries.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yes.
That was like super fun to rub. But yeah, there's like a lot. I mean, there's so many. There was like some really cool. I went down to Yakima last year, did some hop rubs. And there was this one like experimental hop that they were working on, and honestly, it smelled like fuzzy peaches. Like it was unreal. It was like single hop beer. They wanted to like showcase the beer, and we just like pulled it off tap there, and it was like, there's no fruit in this. Like it's unreal. Like, you know what I mean? You just see like hops like showcase so well, and you just it's like all the fruit aromas and taste like, and you're just like, what the heck? It tastes like
that wasn't Cicerone, was it?
No, I don't know what that. I don't know
like
if it had a
HBC?
name. Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but yeah, it was unreal. I'm like, it's stuck in my head. Wow. My memory's gone, too much drinking, but
Have you had a single hop Cicerone beer?
I don't think so.
Because it's exactly what you're describing. That's why I thought it might have been like.
Did somebody make one recently?
Both Third Moon and Third Moon did the observation, and Badlands did pedestal, because he has like the pedal. Both this like, I think the observation on Third Moon is just like whatever they want to do, and pedestal is a single hop from Thingo. The Third Moon, they were both exceptional. The Third Moon one specifically was probably I would maybe argue it was their best beer this year that I had. It was disgusting. It was so good. Like, and it was exactly what you like. The peach rings, just it was like drinking that like creamy canned peaches. It was just so fire. Like if you mix it with that murky hazy IPA, for some reason that like, like the murkiness tends to align with more of that creaminess. And that just works so well with that particular hop. But
that sounds dope.
Yeah, this is
yum.
You just can't go wrong with any of this. Amarillo is like such a legendary hop too, and it's like I feel like, is it? I imagine it's just me, but I feel like there's a difference between Saphir and the others, but there's not a massive difference in the rubbing of. I mean, there's the T90 pellet, so it's not like a hot, like you said before, like not like whole cone or whatever. So it's not like but they're like fresh. It's is that accurate that during this mini rub thing that we're doing, is this more like, should there be a large difference between them all? Not really.
No.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, no. So basically like this, so these are the three that are in this
Right.
beer. So I just wanted to kind of give you like a good sense of like how we, build off of like, and like build off of each other's hops. So like when you're putting like a Zacco with Citra, with Amarillo, it's going to be a different experience than some other hops that you're going to put together. Right. So,
Mm,
and it's funny when you put like, hop A with hop B, you might get something totally different come out than hop B and hop C or whatever it is. So it's kind of cool to kind of see, hops, smell them individually, smell them, as parts, and then see how they kind of integrate into the beer as well, which is really cool. So,
mm,
building on flavor, building on aroma, like these are the things that we do as brewers. It's like building a recipe, right? Like the
mm.
layers of different things. So, yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a good sense, like, there are like the Saphirs, there are like, there's the other ones like the English, like Fuggle or Goldings and those
Thank
kind of
God.
things. And
Yeah.
those are more like those woody, earthy kind of notes that like go for like really well in those English style. Shocking in those English styles.
Yeah.
And then,
Like
we've got the
scars and
American.
stuff in the
Yeah.
like
So
the
yeah,
crispies
yeah,
and
the
everything.
German Czech. So like the German Czech, yeah, exactly. Like the more like noble old school hops too, right? So the Satz,
Yes.
the Bald, the Tettnanger, all those fun things too. So
Mm.
that's more in the realm of like that Saphir hop, right?
Yes. Yes.
So so yeah, so it's kind of really cool to like, say, and it's a little bit of a cheat sheet too. It's like, I want to make an American IPA. Which kind of hop should I use? It's like, okay, maybe you should go with American hops,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, right, because these are where all these styles originated, right? So, yeah, very kind of cool. Like the original old school monks and brewers were using, like in the Middle Ages, were these German and Czech noble hops, right? So, I don't know, like it's just very cool to see like where things came from, where the original hops people were using, and then what has come from that, and like all these crazy like hybrids and all this different like really cool science and agriculture around it all, right? People forget that beer is made from barley and hops, and these are huge, like these are crops at the end of the day, right? Like, there's different environmental factors, there's all these different things that are going to give us various things, and like keeping a consistent beer is very tough because of that, right? Because your
Yeah.
galaxy, like you said, like your galaxy one year and your galaxy the next year are going to be potentially totally different. So how do you work around those challenges? So some cool different like finagling as well, to make sure that you are tasting not the hops, the malt, and smelling the hops, because those are the ingredients that you're putting in your beer, right? Like just like
Yeah.
you would taste as you go, like as a chef, right? So yeah, it's pretty cool. And not a lot of people, I don't think, take time to like really do like, tasting of the different malts and tasting it, like smelling of the different hops and breaking it down when they get like a new lot or whatever it is, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, we're all super busy. Just sometimes you just go, but it is kind of cool to like just sit and kind of do it the old school way and
Yeah.
smell
Particularly
it.
as a drinker, like if you're not making it, it's cool to just. Yeah, it's good. Like once again, we've done this stuff in the past, but I couldn't even tell you the last time. It definitely wasn't since the pandemic. So like it's
No.
been a hot minute for us. So it's really cool to reconnect to this type of thing and to have like a refresher. And obviously there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that I didn't know. I had never actually heard that much detail about the different classes of malts and the way that it all works and stuff. So I mean, like it's really cool that, and this is what we said to you yesterday, that it doesn't matter how many beers you've sort of drank. It's really cool to sometimes just get a reminder, because if you're a drinker and you're not in the industry, whether you're a brewer or otherwise, like to really like, I don't know, you think about it, but you don't really think about it. You're like, which hops? Like most of the time, you don't ask which malts this
Yeah.
beer has. It's which hops does it have,
Yeah.
to really paint the picture of it. So it's really cool, even just to like get the. I don't know. We don't homebrew, so like I don't really see hops that often.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's cool just again squish
Been
some
a
bad
long
boys
time.
up. It's been a hot minute, right?
Yeah.
I think it's like it's super fun. I did want to ask your particular, and I don't think there's like an exact science answer to this. Just curious. When people are making IPAs, particularly let's call IPAs, are the ones that would have multiple hops in it. Is there
Mm-hmm.
like a point of what's it called? Point of
A diminishing return.
diminishing return. Thank you so much.
I had
No,
a feeling.
yeah. Is it point of or law? The law of
Law of
diminishing.
diminishing returns.
So, like,
Yeah.
at what point does it become redundant to
Mm.
have, like, how many different types of hops? You can have 3, and that seems like pretty cool. You have 4, like, can you have 7? I've had beers with that many in it, but do you have an opinion as to at what, when it becomes redundant to have this many different hops to where it becomes this maybe a mess, as opposed to, like you mentioned, the chef, where you're really crafting flavors because you know that these 3 hops have completely different profiles. If you put them together, you're going to get X. But if you have 7 different hops, it might be just ridiculous. Like, do you have an opinion on that at all?
Yeah, I think that, when you're building out your recipes and trying to figure out what flavor profiles you want for your hop forward beer, you are considering multiple things. So you're like, okay, well, I really want to take the citrus note from this one. And, it's got a little bit more bold citrusy note. This one's got more of that like mango tropical note that I want. So I really like that layering of that. Da, da, da. So, for me, I think 3 is probably where, like, personally, if I was going to homebrew, like, that's probably where I would live, around the 3 mark. Once you get to a certain point, I think it's just muddled. You don't really know what's coming from what. You could be getting, sure, if you had like the utmost intense palate, which like, 1% of the population, less 0.1% of the population has, like maybe you could differentiate like all the different things, but honestly, it just gets completely muddled. It gets overwhelming. It overpowers the like balance from the malt profile, I think. Also, it's expensive as hell. So you're like throwing in all these hops that are not actually doing anything. So like when people say,
money.
we did this like massive dry hop with like, this many kilograms of hops and we got all the max flavor, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, cool. But like, you're really just, everybody has threshold for flavor, for taste, for bitterness, all these things. So at a certain point, people can't really like break it down into all the different parts. It just gets muddled. So much like bitterness. There's like huge, like 100 IBUs, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, cool. But like the average person can only taste to like, let's say, I don't know what it is, but like 50 IBU. And then anything above that is just bitter as hell. Right. So you're really just like muddling everything. And then it's just like super expensive to make. So it's like really no point. We do see that sometimes. And when,
from time to time,
especially when I was like working in the contract business, you see like, okay, well, maybe we can like, decrease this, you're going to save this much money. And the end product is actually going to just be a little bit more, refined is the word. So yeah, I do think that there is definitely that cap of how many hops you should be putting into a beer for sure.
That's an interesting answer. And I'm even, as you were saying that, I was thinking about the people that, the breweries that I think make the best IPAs, and typically you wouldn't see more than 3. I can't really recall any of the best IPA brewers, whether that, what Canada or beyond, they would have more than 3. Sometimes like collabs seem to just be like, they're just throwing shit at the wall, but like, it's not that as common. So that's good to hear. I've never actually asked anyone that before, but I always kind of like figured, I don't think it's ever really come up, but I just kind of assumed that there was like a point where you're just not even going to taste anything and it's just going to be tropical fruit. And like, it could be any of the thing, unless it's like Sabro where there's this coconut or something like that.
Oh yeah.
But aside from that, yeah. Okay, sick. This is great. This is fascinating. So, shall we move to the yeast portion?
Yes, let's move to the yeast portion. Okay. So I have our Soak Up the Sun Saison. It was only available on tap, so we have hilariously large growlers.
I was just thinking,
I know.
growlers were
everywhere. Crowler was like this shit back in the day.
There was even one brewery in Montreal that was like literally just growlers is all they had back then.
I'm trying to discuss that.
Yeah.
That was growlers even.
Oh yeah.
That wasn't even Corallo. That was like even previous. But a bunch did get it. They're so weird. Just hold it. It's just weird.
I know. When I brought it down,
oh yeah,
like,
right.
This is just so massive. It's just I forgot.
I feel like it's gonna spill.
I know, right? It's just so odd.
So obviously, like
a growler you can close back up, or like a half growler you can like close up and have.
Yeah, I wish that is the one downside of crowlers, but fortunately, well, for you got a big night ahead of you, Kim. But
you got work.
I know. I'm gonna have to call my husband and drink half of this with me.
There you go.
Oh, that's a pretty good win.
Call him back up.
His honestly, one of his favorite styles is Saison, so I don't think I will have a much of an
problem
argument
there.
trying to get him involved.
Is he
Yeah,
involved in
exactly.
beer, or is he a
No,
fan
no,
of your
no.
work?
He is my guinea pig and a very big fan of my work. Yes.
There you go.
Oof. There you go. That's all you can ask
He
for.
loves. He's not a cook by trade, but he loves to cook. So
Okay,
Oh, that's
he
so
is.
neat.
that's
I
cute.
was like, yeah, I was like, he'll make the dinners and I'll curate the beers. It's a cute
Yeah.
little
Getting
duo. So yeah, we're not mad about it.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
that's
all
amazing.
right.
Well, this smells great.
So
So this is the
yeah, so
yeast
this one's
portion
a
of the
fun one.
conversation.
I know the yeast. This is honestly my favorite part. I
Okay.
think coming from like a bio background and like about microorganisms and all this fun stuff and like how without yeast we cannot have beer. So it is something that's essential. We talked about water at the beginning, and I think water profile and like as much as malt and hops and everything is very important, but like I think water and yeast are like my two favorite in terms of like really dialing in some things. So yeah, but I could go on and on about just water, but that's not as exciting as awesome yeast. So we'll talk about yeast.
Yeast it is.
So in beer we have, and this Saison style is an ale yeast. So we have lager yeast and we have ale yeast.
Yes.
And then we've got some other, we've got some fun like wild yeast and bacteria and things like that. So we use all of these fun things to our advantage. And this was a really good kind of mix of all of those different things. So this Soak Up the Saison is a, Belgian Saison style, excuse me. And it is actually, we did a little bit of blending with a golden sour we had in barrels. So it, kind of brings in not only that cool old world Saison yeast that we used in this, but also some of those like bacteria and wild yeast that we got from the barrel aging as well. So a little bit of complexity in there and kind of showcases a lot of different kind of cool microorganisms that we use to create these different beer styles. So so this is our Soak Up the Sun Saison. Saisons are honestly, I think they're really great style. I don't see much of them like in the LCBO and things like that much anymore. I picked up a couple at Duran yesterday because I was like, honestly, I feel like I haven't seen them in a while, other than like, the classics and things like that. But a lot of breweries, not really releasing it commercially. And I
Especially
just
not
think
in Ontario.
If you're in Quebec,
Yeah.
you would see it.
They're
That's
everywhere.
why Kim was saying LCBO. I was like,
Right.
if you're in Quebec, you would see them.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And like a lot of like beautifully like bottle conditioned saisons and things like that. A lot of breweries, I think they're just a little worried about the saison yeast getting into their their regular like clean beers and things like that. So
Fair.
that is the worry. At Bench we do have like a funk side and a clean side, so we actually can make funk beers and all that fun stuff without worrying about our clean side getting contaminated. So that's always good. So we get to make some fun things, barrel things as well.
Do you mind that a little bit too? Because I think we're also talking to we're newbie friendly. So
We are
the
indeed.
Yeast, how the yeast? Oh,
Kim froze.
Kim froze.
I'm sure she'll dial back in a second.
Really,
Oh, sorry that froze.
We got
there
you.
you go.
Sorry, that froze a little bit. I don't know what happened.
That's
You got
okay.
me?
Tech, we got
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
Back in
you're
business.
back. I was just
Awesome.
thinking because we're talking about like, oh, why is it maybe not economical or something's inconvenient or potentially something can happen? Like, what specifically is the risk? Like, what happens chemically when you have this saison yeast come into a picture if you're in one brew house? Like, what is? I would love for someone to understand exactly what happens and what goes wrong and why you take a risk in that.
Absolutely. So it is so saison yeast, and there's a bunch of different kind of like these farmhouse styles yeasts that are what we call diastatic yeasts. So diastatic yeast means that basically, to sum it up, that they will consume a large amount of the sugar. So like most Saccharomyces yeast strains will actually like leave residual sugar behind. Whereas this yeast is actually able to break down those larger chain sugars that Saccharomyces is not. So that's why it's super dry of a style. So you'll notice there's not a lot of residual sugar left. So let's say this yeast gets into like your lager or well, lager's pretty dry. Let's say, you're trying to make this like juicy IPA, you put dextrose in it to have non-fermentable sugars, all these fun things, and then your Saison strain gets in it, and then it's bone dry. Like it will get and infect your other beers. And then also these Saison yeasts have a lot of esters. So these like fruity and like phenolic, depending on how they're manipulated. And then so all those different flavors can also get into your regular clean beers. So then you're just changing the flavor profile totally. So there's like so many implications of those cross contaminating that can really cause your beers to be like funky or phenolic or things like that when you really don't want those in your clean beer. Yeah, so it is a challenge for a lot of breweries, but with proper cleaning practices and things like that, and like we have different sides of the brewery, like two different, like there's an airlock between the two and all that fun stuff, so very, very separate. But if you have separate hoses, separate like tri-clamps, you have separate gaskets and all that stuff for your like funk versus your clean, there's various ways to get around this, but it is very much a worry for folks sometimes. So it totally makes sense why there's not a ton of them, but especially in cans, like if you wanted, running that through your canning line is also a thing. If you don't, I mean, like there's various things like that, right? But bottle condition, you'll see a lot too, which is great. So it doesn't have to go, through. You can have a separate bottling line and then bottle condition, so you don't have to like run it through your canning line and contaminate that and stuff. So there's ways around it. It's just a little bit more labor intensive and more considerations for sure.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, no, thank you for that, because I think it's it just really shows like the science side of it, where you're like, oh, like there's some real science happening. It's not just art and creative. Like there's not a lot of things that you're cooking where like, I don't know, you can wash the pan and you're probably gonna be fine. But like, I think it's really interesting how there is so much science to it, where it's like it could destroy a whole big, huge thing that you're doing because this strain just hits it or something. I think it's very fascinating.
For sure.
Yeah.
So if we we can run through these tasting notes. Please. And then talk a little bit more about like yeast and bacteria and all that fun stuff. So we've got a nice kind of like pale yellow color on this guy. It's like got a nice little haze on it. It would have, I was like, it was filled from the top. So generally it is quite effervescent of a style, usually because it is that bottle conditioned. So more of that like natural carbonation coming from the yeast when it is bottle conditioned. So far more carbonated, far more effervescent in general from the style. And then if we want to smell it, so on the nose,
I'm getting a lot of that barrel aged, like that sort of funk and tartness.
Yeah. So, so blending, I'm trying to remember, I think, so a lot of the brewers, like these barrels were before our time kind of thing. So, from what I got from, the brewers, they were saying it was like a golden sour that was put into, wine barrels, and then, whatever was in there, whether it be Brett, don't know what strain, but Brett, bacteria, all that fun stuff. So they're just going to layer on that complexity. So you get that like barnyardy, funky, like almost a little bit leathery kind of vibes as well. But then you're getting like from the Saison yeast, you also get those like beautiful fruity, kind of spicy, peppery, baking spice aromas as well. So it's kind of like, it's got like that true like French Saison like characteristic, but then it also has this like layered in barrel aged, funky bready kind of vibe to it too. But in a light way, it's not overpowering. It's still quite drinkable. So yeah, but it does have a lot of like really nice complexity, and a reason why I chose this beer for us, because I was like, I feel like it's got a couple of different things going on, which is really cool, because all those different things are attributed to the various like yeasts and bacteria and things that are in this, which is cool.
Yeah.
Right. So let's taste it.
Yeah. The blend from first sip, I know you have to have a second sip, doesn't seem to like overpower it. It's still giving that real like tradition. Like if I didn't read that it was blended, and if I didn't pick it up from the nose, I don't know if I would have known. I feel like it's kind of subtle.
It is subtle. We didn't want it to be overpowering. We wanted it to kind of what do you call it, like enhance the Saison qualities versus like overpower it is kind of how we wanted to go about it. So kind of just add the complexity without overpowering it. So and like that, like Saison used it in general. This is the older old Saison from Escarpment Labs, and it really does have like really nice kind of those like traditional like fruity kind of spice, baking spice kind of notes to it. So
cloves
that in itself, so that in itself is just like really beautiful. And then just layering on that like a little bit maybe of that subtle like that bready kind of even like woody like oaky note as well, but just like very very light. So yeah, it's got a lot of different things going on it. So
yeah, it's fascinating. To be honest, saisons are not my like favorite style, but I've always enjoyed like talking about them more and drinking them more lately. I find that like it's almost like you doing this like full circle thing where like there's a period of time when, and I'm saying this because I imagine there's a bunch of other people maybe in my position where like there might be certain styles that you don't drink too much, and then when the opportunity comes up now, I'm kind of like more jumping towards wanting, like I got convinced to like, now I love barley wines. I used to just not feel them at all, but a bunch of friends convinced me to do it. Now I like proactively buy them. I really enjoy them. Went up to, I think I was telling you, went up to Mark, who was the original brewer at Bench, actually, who set up the funk side and set everything up. He has his own brewery now, and went up to see him on the weekend, and it was, he makes only barrel-aged farmhouse beer, fruited and on and blah blah blah, and it was just cool. It's cool to sort of be reintroduced to it in all these different ways and just sort of have the different styles just explained by people who know more about it, because I wasn't into it, I didn't learn a ton about it, so I find it fascinating to do that.
And we just did a video. Our friend is here from SF, and we have a series called In My Cellar, and so some people come down, and then they have to choose a random beer. Like they just get to choose it. Craig doesn't, he doesn't give any like, hey, let's take this. He just
lets them do their thing.
Lets them do the thing. And I thought it was interesting because he chose a Saison. I feel like Saison's been in our life for the last like 10 days or something like that. It's just
like a
very
lot.
Funny. It's like,
that is funny.
Because he chose that from La Ferme, who's a brewery in Quebec.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And I don't know, I just feel like Saisons keep coming up now.
You're right. I forgot. I didn't even think of that.
But yeah, so I think it's cool. I like them. I dig them. I think they're especially like when we were kind of going through that tasting, like something kind of similar to wine when you get into these fruited saisons and stuff like that. I was kind of like appreciating the balance of acidity and appreciating fruit and things like that in different ways. So yeah, I'm getting more interested in them.
I agree.
Yeah, and it is like cool, like even the acidity of this, adding that barrel aged stuff, there are those like, lactobacillus and all those things like on the go. So they're making it like a little bit more of that like sour kind of vibe. So like maybe the pH is like a little bit lower because of those aspects. And then, when a pH is lower, it actually brings out a lot of like fruitiness in things. So, or a lot of flavors and various things like that. Like when you, squish a lemon on top of, a piece of fish or something, you're just like bringing out different flavors and things like that. Right. So, lowering the acidity really brings out like fruitiness to me, and like maybe a little bit of those spicy notes are like the black peppery kind of notes too, which is indicative of that Saison style. So I think it's just like works really well together, the mix, and in this like ratio too. But yeah, Saisons are like really cool in that like I'm gonna nerd out a bit about the Saison history because I think it's pretty cool. And it's like so like Saison comes from like the word like saisonnier, which is like basically in the French part of Belgium. There's a lot of like, farmstead breweries and things like that. So people would brew, their own beer on their property, use the local wild yeast or whatever it was. There's all these different strains and all these different farmsteads. But Saison was actually a lot lower of a alcoholic beer. So it was like, 3%, things like that. So it was more of that table beer style, and it was given to the saisonniers, which were the summer workers on the farm. So it was given to them so that they didn't get super intoxicated while they were working. Beer more safe than water in some places, but also as part of their wages too and things like that. So the style has gone from like really I can't imagine what that beer would taste like. I have no idea. Like some of the earlier beers must have been really interesting, but
Interesting
but
is a good word.
kind of cool. Yeah, right. But like no temperature control, things like that. I mean, for this style, it's fine. Like, you know, you do want to do it a little bit warmer because it is, you know, really brings out those fruity and those phenolic notes for this style. But yeah, it was like really low ABV. Now you'll see them, you know, obviously a lot higher. I was like, this one is 6%, this guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually you see it around like, yeah, way back we see around 3. But yeah, the Saison came from Saisonnier because the Saison is like season, like the seasonal workers. Like, so it's really kind of cool. Like a lot of these different like histories of the style and where they came from and how they've evolved over the years and like, you know, what we do to them when we throw a bunch of barrels and random things in them. So it's kind of cool. But yeah, so yeast in general is like super, super fascinating. So obviously single cell fungal organism. And basically there are 2 main categories on the clean side. So lager style and so lager yeast.
Cold fermenting? No.
So, yeah.
Cold fermenting?
Yeah.
And
So lager.
top, right?
So lager is bottom fermenting. And it is, so it's Saccharomyces pastorianus, and then ale yeast is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So that is our top fermenting. So lager yeast, you do more in the range of like 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. So like low and slow, because you do want it to be like crisp and clean and like a very clean profile. You don't really want in your lagers, you don't want the yeast providing much to the lager. You want it to be usually a malt forward product, right? So you want to let the yeast in that beer really needs to be more subtle. Then you're looking at ales, and ales are, there's a huge range. Like the Saison is an ale, the IPA is an ale, a stout is an ale. Like there's so many different things, and there's so many different strains of ale yeast. Like if you go on like Escarpment's website and just like look at all the ale yeast and all the different flavors that can contribute and like how you manipulate it, like it is a living organism.
We froze. We're just sitting here yamming on churro.
Like, we're just eating so many.
It's fucking awesome.
Churro. It's so funny.
Yeah,
Hello.
We got you back.
I know you guys are snacking. I love this.
I wonder if the sound's coming through. I hope it's not. Sorry.
I just keep trying to back away because I'm
Same.
like,
So I want to be like
the crunchiness.
Like,
crunch.
But yeah, so like, yeast is like a living organism, is affected by the environment it's in. So depending on what yeast strain you're using, you want to manipulate it in different ways. So you can, you know, pitch at a certain temperature. If you like, if colder, if you want it to not have that much effect, like warmer temperatures, if you want it to come out with like various, you know, byproducts of fermentation that are going to cause esters or phenolics or things like that you want in certain styles. So like the Saison, like a Hefeweizen, you want that bubblegummy kind of note, you want that clove note, right? So these are the various things that you can like manipulate in that way. So there's such a range of ale yeast you can use, which is really, really fun. So you can just kind of play with different flavor profiles in that alone. So like this Saison is 2-row wheat and then dextrose for some body. And honestly, it's super simple, right? Like it's like, okay, we've got bready notes pretty much, right? So the base layer is very plain. The hops in this are, you know, we use the Centennial for bittering like most of the other beers, but then it's also the Saphir hops. So those Saphir hops that we tasted earlier. So, or we did not taste them. We smelled them. Don't eat them. We'll be able to taste forever. But we smelled for it because we don't want those, you know, big powerful hops that we saw in the IPA. We want those kind of like German Czech, like spicy herbal, because what do we see from a yeast strain? The old world Saison yeast strain, kind of like those spicy fruity notes, right? So spicy herbal, spicy fruity kind of like blend together nicely. So you do want to kind of mimic those styles and not anything that's totally off-putting. Like you would never put like a mango forward hop in something like this, right? So, I mean, maybe you would. Some people are putting all kinds of stuff in all the different things, but if you're thinking about the classic, the more classic of styles, you wouldn't.
That's true.
So yeah, so there is a lot of like really cool things that we can play with in just yeast alone, like having the same malt bill as like, you know, the Lincoln Lager, but then like playing with all kinds of funky yeast, you can create like a bazillion different beers. Like it's really, really cool. So those are like the 2 basic, like clean yeast that we use. And then of course there's Brettanomyces, which is the wild yeast. And even in that, there's so many different kinds of strains of that. And like I made like an all Brett beer. I'm trying to remember back, Brett D, I think it is. And it was basically just like pineapple and like really beautiful fruity notes. And then you can use like a different kind of Brett, and it's going to be like that barnyard horse blanket, leathery kind of, right? So there's like so many, even within like certain styles, there's so many different, within certain strains, there's so many different like strains of the strain. So you can really just like go to town. And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Kvike, but like that was like the huge rage, right? Like
for a couple years
as brewers, you're going to, but going to school for like, basically treating yeast like a little diva and being like, what do you need, honey? What do you like? What temperature do you like? Da, da, da. And then all of a sudden being like, oh, let's just crank up the temperature and who cares about this? We don't need this and that. And like learning all about like what Kvike could do and like how fast you can like clean ferment something with no byproducts was like mind blowing for us brewers who like.
Froze again. I imagine that'd be pretty funny to like do all that in school and like test all the different styles. I never really thought about how they show you. They probably get you to brew with everything.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm just also thinking about everybody who has to test all these different things in order to get to this place.
This shit happened over hundreds and maybe in thousands of years. Probably like
just talking about like, oh, you can't put these hops in the Saison. You really just mess this up and it's pointless now. Because now you had this many hops that you were used to putting in something else that you can't put in this, or this style that you can't put in this.
They probably figured that shit out like hundreds of years ago. Like for the traditional styles and the new stuff, it would have been like how did haze come about and how did they figure out? Obviously, the Vermont IPAs. Well, the oats for sure. It seemed like part of it, but that's why we need to have. I want to have John from Alchemist on.
Yeah.
Oh wow, fully dropped off. She'll call back.
Yeah.
To like learn. Arguably they did the first one. So I'm like, what happened? Where did Heady Topper come from? Where did Focal Banger come from? Why did you do that? Why did you take an American IPA, which was already a new style, and then be like, fuck it, we're gonna not clarify it? Like, what happened there, and what how did you think about keeping those flavors in, and then how did it go from there to like whatever? I don't know who was next, but I imagine like Trillium or Treehouse. That's my guess. No one's really been able to tell me the history. I'm trying to like piece it together slowly through the pod and through the conversations. I figured out who did the first and second New England IPAs in Ontario so far, but I want to know more about the history in general.
Was that Barcat?
Barcat was the first, which is why I rest in peace.
Yeah.
It's even sadder. And the second was Sawdust with Juicing. And even they called it, Sam said the other day when we went and brewed the collab, he said it was a, Barrington's got a little treat. Yeah. He said it was a, it's supposed to be Vermont IPA, and then when I drank it, I'm like, I could kind of see that, to be honest, because it's like peach juice, and it's not like that full murky thing, and it just tastes like peaches.
Yeah.
So,
should we text her?
Yeah, maybe we could text her and just be like, hey, just call back. We're still here. I mean, we're in the home stretch anyway, but it's great. Yo, honestly.
Okay, listen. Someone needs to just start selling two-row in little packages for you to eat while you're at a brewery.
I wonder if people could like make
this is delicious.
No.
But there's a ton of calories of sugar. I need to look them up.
Yeah, I wonder how many we've eaten. It's fucking great.
Not half a cup even.
No, half a cup. No. I mean, like you get like 8 at a time.
Yeah, I'm taking like 3 to 4 at a time. But
I'm a bit of a pig.
Guys, two-row.
Let's text Kim. Right? Okay, so
I wonder if some of these are happy accidents that happen with the kind of beers that go for, like, say, like even to interview John, for example.
Okay.
I wonder if some things happen and they're just like, oh, this is awesome. Like coconut rice. I don't know, maybe you weren't gonna put coconut in instead of something else, and then it ended up being amazing.
Oh yeah. So Kim said her internet is down. So should we just maybe pause the pod for a sec and we'll come back rather than just keep it dragging? All right, guys. We'll grab Kim once she's got her thing. We'll be back in a sec.
Yeah.
We are back, y'all. So, Kim, we were talking about the specific different strains of Brett, if we're not mistaken. Just in general, I think just sort of speaking to what's, which different types of yeast, I think specifically you were saying like on the funk side, like, there's this like ale yeast, lager yeast that are both sort of different, and there's variations within that, of course, particularly like, like the foggy London that a lot of people use for the haze and stuff like that. Then the funky stuff, which is way more complex and deep, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. There's good bacteria and bad bacteria too. So that's the fun
true.
thing that we always get to learn. We always get to learn about, sometimes not in the best way. There's a lot of like really fun off flavors that come out of certain of those, like, baby vomit and various
had
things
one.
like vin. Oh no! Don't tell me
It was
where.
from.
Don't tell me how.
It was a big brewery in the States, but we're at Small Pony, and it wasn't Small Pony's beers, but it was I think it was Cascade. Oh no! I wish it wasn't them, but it was Allagash, and it was like that. They just busted it out, and it was just shit happens. It's okay. Like you can't bat 1,000 like the whole thing. It was just we never experienced that off flavor before, and it was
awful.
like, whoa.
Wow. I was like, oh no, this can happen.
Yeah.
It's
And it's obviously that specific bottle most likely maybe a part of that batch, but goddamn, baby vomit is it's a rough
the worst one.
It's a rough one. Do you think it's the worst one?
For me personally, like, we always have this like debate where you're like, can you handle poo or vomit? And I'm definitely like poo over vomit.
Any day.
I
can't do vomit.
cannot. Yeah. Oh, the vomit, the stomach acid vibe. Nope. I just can't.
Well, there's the clip.
I really can't. Yeah. Oh
wow.
boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that one.
No video
poo
of
over vomit.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I think when you have like either a kid or a dog, you're just picking up poo.
Yeah.
So like you get used to it, and it's not a big deal. But the vomit is like,
it's not a good.
No.
Even just talking about it, let's like
stays forever.
Yeah, let's move on. And we're moving on.
Okay. Let's relax.
But I mean, yeah, there's like, some really cool things where like, we use like acetic acid, like the vinegary kind of notes, like in some of the like yeast or the bacteria that we're looking at, is bad in a lot of different ways. But then if you're making like a Flanders, like you want it. So like, there's a lot of different like funny, off flavors where, like Rolling Rock has a little bit of DMS in it, and that's good. That's to style, right? So there's just like so many things like within these various, off flavors or something. Like DMS is a like more of a malt off flavor, but like in terms of like yeast off flavors and the things that, are byproducts of the yeast fermentation is like, sometimes they're favorable, sometimes they're not. But, baby vomit's just never favorable. So, we just don't want that one. No, hard pass.
No. Aggressive pass.
So it is, it's a wild yeast world. So, there's honestly endless opportunity with all these different ingredients. And yeast, I think, is just because, my background in like bio, I feel like I just have like an affinity towards it. And like the fact that it's a living organism that we have to take care of, nurture. It is what creates alcohol. Without it, we would not have our delicious beverage of beer. So yeah, it's just really kind of fascinating. The different flavor profiles and aromas that it can give, and the millions of styles that it can create. So yeah,
very cool.
Yeah. When we went to Casey Brewing, didn't we talk about him playing like music to the yeast or something?
I think he might.
We were talking about that too, like, because of what you said, like the living organism part of it, and I was like, I don't know, I think that's pretty cool.
I swear I've heard. I don't know if it was a brew. Like good memory.
It feels right. I was kind of like,
I don't know if this is on the pod, but I've heard like just anecdotes that like if you play, like people tested and you could play like say Kendrick Lamar or like classical music or like metal to different genres to the yeast, and it responds differently. And I don't recall which one did. I don't know if there's like one that was superior or whatever, but like the music that you played it, was
because if you think about plants, if you do certain things to plants, if you speak to them, done that, so it's like you would technically be affecting and impacting it. I think that's cool.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, that is true, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All day.
It reminds me of like when you're in university or whatever, like in school, and we're like, if you listen to Mozart and like classical music, your neurons are firing way faster, so you're gonna be able to study better. Blah blah blah, all this stuff. Like, I tried it. I don't think it helped.
Did it
You
help?
know what I mean? I'm like,
yeah.
hell no,
Hell
no. I mean, the fact that I was cramming for my exam the night before probably didn't factor in. I could got not enough classical music in the world to help me, but
every time that was me every time.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know how it goes,
Right?
guys.
I envy. Who are those people?
Who
Just on a
actually
side
study
note,
ahead?
who is like when you get the thing and you just start doing it right away. Like how do you not be like, oh, okay, it's due on the 16th. Awesome, I'll start on the 13th in your mind, or 14th, and then you start on the 15th of the night or something like that.
Yeah, it's usually
there
the
are
way it
people
goes.
who are like, oh yeah, like
A month
I'll
before
start
or something.
immediately and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
What a
Hell no. I do my best work under pressure, so
Same.
that's that's what I like to
Yeah,
say.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what it is. You just because when you ain't got no choice, you're gonna perform. But
Yeah.
if you have a choice,
Yeah, and you might do a bit more
Yeah.
lackluster. Yeah, I like to think that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Unlike yeast, they always perform.
There you go.
They don't like
Always.
to be under pressure too. So yeah, that's
No, there you go. Completely opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they're
feel like
those
this
people.
is yeah, exactly. We are the opposite of yeast.
Yeah.
I feel like this has like been really cool, and we're gonna touch on one more thing before we wrap up. But this is really cool. I feel like we really like summarized the 3 key ingredients aside from water of beer, and whilst we're just constantly yamming on the 2-row here.
Oh my gosh, it's just ridiculous.
It's spectacular. I'm actually almost like kind of full.
Yeah, I feel like it's a nice.
I feel like we ate a bunch on top of the liquid cubs we're drinking.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is great, Kim. Thank you so much for going through all of this stuff. This has been fascinating. Like we were sort of saying briefly off air, like in that pause, just like it's cool to have that refresher. As much as you think you know about beer, and maybe you do know, it's always good to just have, because there's a bunch of things I picked up tonight that some of them I never heard before, so it was brand new lessons, and some of it I'd had heard before, but maybe hadn't thought about it for a while. Learned different tasting methods and stuff that I wasn't familiar with. And I feel like there's like, not everyone. There could be, mostly I think in beer is most people, aside from the industry folks, would probably just drink a lot of beer and think about it and talk about it with people, but not really have this proper techniques and like really like sit here and chew on the malt and rub some hops while you think, thinking about it. It's a cool experience. So whilst we couldn't provide the actual physical experience to everybody, hopefully that I know, I'm sure if you pop down to your local brewery, can I get like half a cup of 2-row? I'm sure they wouldn't mind to
Snack on that.
slap
Heck
you a little
yeah.
bit and put it in a bowl on the tables,
I should, instead of nuts on the table, we just have like little barley malts for you to snack on. Yeah, no kidding.
I would order that in a second, and it would cost them nothing.
Oh yeah,
It's a great idea.
I just I really, there's so many different beer styles. There's so many different things. You go to a beer fridge, or go to a bar, or like a beer bar, and you're just like, what the heck are all these styles? And you really just, it can be quite overwhelming and quite intimidating. So, breaking it down to like the elements of what a beer is, it is only 4 ingredients, unless you're throwing, adjuncts and fruits and all those things in it. But it really is just, 4 main ingredients. And, if you break it down to those, it doesn't seem as intimidating if you can kind of see where those flavor profiles are coming from. So, that's just something that like I always reiterate to my students when they were like, well, there's so many things I have to memorize and this, and I'm like, okay, well, what flavors are you tasting? Like, what do you think? Like, these are the different malts that we're using here. Like, what does that actually look like? Breaking a food dish down to its elements and saying like, okay, these all flavors, are built to make this dish, kind of thing. Right. So, hopefully it's like bite size information to create, a bigger picture beer style kind of thing. So hopefully makes it a little bit more approachable for folks.
Yes, I think that's what you achieved this evening. Exactly right. And hopefully, whether you're newer or whether you're more experienced, I think that was something for everyone to take out of this one. So the last thing we want to touch on, there was something, a bit of like something we had in common. When you were at Mill Street, you brewed a beer can you explain the beer? I don't want to mess it up, but you did something that aligns with the link up side of stuff that we're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was kind of like in that like Phantasm craze where everybody was trying to get their hands on Phantasm. We saw it
that
come
wasn't that
out
long ago, a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was like last
year.
I think it was last year we made the beer. Yeah, it was last year.
Dope.
Last fall. So we really we wanted to do a women-led project at Mill Street in conjunction with this Spirit of Inclusion initiative that the LSBO was doing. So we created a beer style, and we wanted to be the first. We wanted to be the first brewery to have a Phantasm beer in the IPA in the LCBO. And I wanted it to be an IPA style because there is also like a lot of misinformation about women not liking hoppy IPA styles or
Sure.
hop forward beers. So I definitely wanted it to be that. I also wanted to kind of work with an ingredient I've never worked with so I could problem solve. That's one of my biggest, like, I love to problem solve. I mean, I'm in planning after all for brewing, so problem solving is my job. I did really love that piece. So I got to create the recipe, which was great. And then every department at Mill Street had like a woman as part of the team. So it was a woman only led project. So, women brewers, women in the QC lab, our microbiologist was a woman, our packaging lead, our like various different individuals. So we all came together and we kind of problem solved a lot of different things that we had to with this integration of Phantasm. So for those that don't know, like Phantasm is basically like it was like white wine. It was like Sauvignon Blanc, I believe it was. Yeah. It's like it was like the skins of the grapes from wine after they crush it, and then they make it into powder. So then we add that into beer, so it gives it a little bit. They have these things like called thiols, and basically the thiols are going to have like really bright, beautiful, like fruity aromas, and it kind of enhances that in the beer. So we wanted to make a New England style IPA with this added like thiol charge to make it just really over the top fruity and delicious. So the fun part about that is that these grape skin powder comes with a lot of micro, so a lot of bacteria and yeast on it. So when we integrate that into a commercial brewery, we had to think of a lot of different ways in which we could minimize the risk. So there's a lot of problem solving, a lot of different cool things that we had to work on there. And then the really cool piece of it all was that we named it 1 in 12. So 1 in 12 is the statistic of women in the beer industry. So 1 in 12 people that work in the industry are women, and even less of those women are from the BIPOC community. So as part of the Spirit of Inclusion initiative, we actually partial proceeds of the beer sales went to fund a scholarship to Niagara College for the brewing program for BIPOC women to attend. So it was very, very cool. And then there was a mentorship piece as well. So we got to mentor someone from the program as well, a woman in the program. So it was multiples of levels, and it was very like near and dear to my heart because I was an alumnus and I was a woman, and obviously in that program, I was one of 3 in my semester. So it was not, there weren't a ton of women, wasn't a ton of women representation in my semester, but I really did see that grow even after I was there, and I really want to see that continue to grow, and also like individuals from the BIPOC community, because a bunch of white folks making beer is not going to make our industry grow. And we're not going to be, there's not going to be any, diversity or a diversity of thought. And really that is quite important to me. I have chosen where I have worked based on the diversity that is at the companies. I, started at Junction. I was starting with a head brewer who was a woman. I then moved to Mill Street, where in the brewing department, it was just 3 women leading the brewing, like head of brewing department. So the brewmaster assistant, and myself were all women. And then now at Bench, the operations team is, if not exactly, very, very close to 50% women. So operations is completely like 50-50, which is just awesome. And definitely something as a woman in the industry, I look for in a workplace. Because, I have, like most women have an experience like little things in different areas where you don't necessarily feel welcome, or, that you're valued and things like that. So, you find the places where, women are bringing each other up. And that's definitely what I've seen in a lot of the various women I've worked with. And I want to bring that energy to other folks as well. So it's definitely very, very important to myself.
That's dope.
Yeah.
I love hearing that. And the great thing about, I guess, is that I love that you got that in the LCBO. So it was the first Phantasm beer in the LCBO in the end.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Dope.
Oh, women
Yeah,
can
it was
make it.
awesome.
Right? Making it happen.
Right? Making it happen.
That is
Yeah, it
very
was
cool,
awesome.
though. That's very cool, and I love to hear that
Hmm.
about in all the places that you've worked. That has been something that has even been there for you to like seek out and be like, awesome. Like this is where I can, connect with people more
Yeah.
like me, and I love that.
I like the term diversity of thought too, because that's
Yes.
something that we always talk about. Like the one we always bring up is the thing with H&M, with the shirt with the monkey on it. And if people don't know about that, you should definitely Google it. But if there was anybody that wasn't a white person on that board who to approve it, they wouldn't have. And I think that comes across in beer. There's a lot of problematic shit that we see in beer that, like, or if you just had one person that just from some other background for that diversity of thought to be, hey guys, just so you know, like, in some cultures this could be considered offensive, and obviously in beer nobody wants to be unwelcoming.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I was gonna switch out the camera battery. Look, oh wow, that's a good freeze right there.
Oh yeah.
Wow, let's change that quick. It'll disappear on the screen. So
Okay.
there you go.
Oh, there you go. Now
Let's reach us.
the light's on you. Now,
Look at that. It's all Kim.
Look at that, Kim. It's all you.
Can I bust out some dance moves?
Yeah, do it up. Go nuts.
Oh, I'm
Ready?
like showing my age. I'm like, what are the cool kids doing? Twerking? I gotta.
Like raise the roof, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, lawnmower. Oh boy.
Oh,
boy.
the kids could never.
Yeah.
Oh,
The kids
my
would never
goodness.
understand.
No, I'm just so happy that all the things that we did, that TikTok and all these things didn't exist, and so they're just with us. It's just women
Yeah, I'm
doing
so
it
grateful.
forever.
We won.
Also, our dances were way more, I guess, appropriate and normal and wholesome and stuff. So
Yeah,
Oh,
the kids. I feel bad for the kids, honestly. Like they got as much as we could clown them or whatever. It's not their fault. Like that they came into this, so
yeah,
you got to make fun. But the diversity of thought I think is really important. Obviously, if most people in beer are white dudes with beards, is what we always say. Clearly now, like you were basically pointing out, it seems like gender is getting closer and closer to 50%, which is phenomenal. As far as I think it's important. I feel like women are more level-headed and make better decisions as a whole. I would argue.
we're better. Yeah.
I don't know, at least in my relationships, the women I know are like,
Yeah,
maybe I know a
we're
lot of
better.
strong women who are just smart and just do shit. But I feel like I'm the one who loses. I lose my shit. Like she keeps everything calm. So I mean, like, it's great. But I also then the diversity side obviously is really important. So I love that you guys made a scholarship for Niagara College, and then it link up within the last few weeks. We did the same thing. We haven't really publicized it yet. So that's why I wanted to bring it up in to sort of complement what you were saying.
When this episode comes out, it'll be announced.
That's true, because this will actually come out next week. This is super quick right now. The scholarship. So we did a $5,000 scholarship for the probably the same program you did. It's called Brewing and
Brewery operations.
there you go. The brewing program for the first year student for this semester. A BIPOC individual the gender isn't specific because that's not what Link Up is for. It's just more the diversity side. And then we'll follow that up, obviously, with helping them through the process of, once they finish the course, getting a job and potentially putting them in touch with some of our partners and see who's got openings and any additional mentorship and things like that. So it's cool that I just feel like there's a lot of people who maybe just need a little bit of assistance to get through, particularly from different communities. Like we never want anyone to feel unwelcome, but imagine if, Tiff, you've obviously been the only one in the room before. So imagine going to the brewing school, just maybe like you said as well, Kim, you were one of 3 women in the class. So there's like the gender side, and then there's the culture, and you're just like, oh, if I'm the only one I don't look like everybody else, am I welcome here? Are they going to be cool? And like you want to make sure that people feel welcome, because that diversity of thought, it all really comes back to that. Whether it's a management side to make wiser decisions and be like, hey, you know what? There's no one of color at this brewery. Probably shouldn't put Biggie on the can again. That people keep doing. And then, or even just as simple as like recipe design, be like, hey, my grandma makes these sick desserts. Maybe we can make a dessert stout that has these ingredients that typically never done before. Then all of a sudden, the community gets more interesting beer. Or if Merit is one of the best examples of that, because they got a black brewer and they got a lot of diverse stuff. So they do what was the Jamaican stout? They did the coconut rum cake stout.
Coconut rum cake stout. They did a sour sour.
I thought that was the stout. No? Oh, okay.
And then in the end, it also spills into their food and all these types of things, because like the co-owner's Indian, and it just shows it's like diversity at so many levels just contributes to a more interesting product. And then there's more interesting marketing. It's just key at all levels.
And we want craft beer to grow. And I don't know if all the kids are drinking much beer these days. And like, obviously, we don't want to encourage alcoholism or anything.
Seltzers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, she's frozen. I was like,
I
her
thought
face
she just
didn't change. I thought
wasn't
she was just concentrating. It's all good. No problem. All right, we're just wrapping up. I was just yapping anyway. I was just ranting.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's fucking cool. We like hearing it. It's dope.
Do you want to come up?
Do you want to say hi, Barrington? You want to say hi? Want to say hi to the people, then? Oh, it's Barrington. I don't know if you guys have seen Barrington for a while. Hey, Bear. Hey, Bear. You got anything to say to the man, What's your favorite style, Bear?
This is terrible for audio.
Yeah. We have a dog here, guys. Sorry
There's
for
a
the
small
audio.
puppy
There's a
sitting
small,
on
very,
the
very
lap,
cute, highly cute puppy.
smelling the two-row.
Yes, he wants them
Which he
too.
was not too much of a fan of, though.
No, I wonder can you probably could eat hops. Actually, you're probably not supposed to eat the
It's
hops.
toxic.
Hops are toxic.
Yeah.
You checked?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Apparently, there's like a whole page about like brewers being like, my dog ate hops and hop poisoning and stuff like that. It's all
Ugh,
yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
okay,
no,
so let's not do that.
Sucks if you're home brewing. You gotta keep your dog like, I guess
Locked
you
away.
should keep them out anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Just keep
Okay, here's
recording.
Kim. Should like.
Oh hey,
There he is. The
There
prince.
he is.
we're like, do you want to say bye to Auntie Kim before we thing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but you're...
Sorry,
Oh,
guys.
we're
I
trying
don't know
to-
what's going on with my internet.
No, you're good.
You're
I was
me.
just ranting
Tech
anyway.
happens.
Exactly. We were basically wrapping up. So either way, really cool to hear. This has been really, once again, thank you so much for hanging out and for going to the trouble to do all this. It was great to meet you in person as well, which I wish we did more often for the pods. It doesn't always happen. I feel like it's cool to connect a little more beforehand. And just like having this like sort of 3D approach to it. Obviously, we do have that with the beer always, but just the additional thing with the ingredients, like this was fun.
Yeah, really fun.
You know, and hopefully and I imagine they will, because you know, I speak to Tiff joins me a lot, but I speak to a lot of very smart people in the industry about this stuff, and I think about it a lot and talk about it a lot. Well, that's fair. I was trying to be inclusive. Yeah, you know the vibes. We talk about it. You hear me.
Like
I tell you shit, and you're just like, okay, hey, babe, this, and you're like, cool. But no, it's really cool. I think it's just really cool, and I feel like once again, there's something for everybody here, regardless of the level of beer that you're at. You know, I feel like you probably got to take something from it, and you know, if at the very least, be reminded of something that you know that you know. But no, this is awesome, Kim. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been very good, cool. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. It was nice to meet you officially after years of following you online. Now now we're like officially friends? Question mark. I mean, I'm not seeing that much as stalker.
I consider friends now. We're texting, so let's let's mates.
Yeah.
And where I'm from,
Barrington's my new best friend. So
there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, man.
Remember Bear? Say hi. Look, Bear. Look.
It's always funny trying to get puppies to look at screens.
I don't think they.
I know.
I guess they don't understand.
You have to like do like fast movements. You're like,
yeah, exactly.
What's going on there, Bear? Bear, what's going on, buddy? What's up?
Yeah, we're like on Zoom
Get a
and both
ball.
our dogs being like, say hi to each other for like 3 minutes, and we're like, stop it.
They were not having it.
I know. Oh my god, it's hilarious.
It's out of control.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Where can everyone find you online if you want to be found online? Because maybe you don't.
Do I want to be found? Yeah. I mean, I'm poorly active on Instagram these days, but my handle is Adventures in Brewing, adventures_in_brewing. I started this account when I was like in brewing school, and it's kind of like spattered with a bunch of different cool beer stuff. So I post not as regular as some folks, but if you want to chat more about beer, I love talking about beer, as you can tell. So
I love it. And are you available if anyone wanted to hire you, whether it's like a bar, restaurant, something like that, and wanted to like get you to sort of do a beer education thing, whether it's yourself or in conjunction with Michelle or something, like as a freelance, is that a thing? Does that? Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely something, would be interesting. I mean, I love to educate, so it's not part of my current role. So yeah, if it was definitely of interest, I could definitely check my busy schedule and make myself available.
Love to see it. Let's take the screenshot here, even though now our thumbnails are different, but I take the screenshot because I use it for other things. Yeah, I do it as a backup, but I also use it for other things. Okay. Do you want to hold, I'm going to take a screenshot here. So do you want to hold up a can or
beer can?
Yeah, beer can, whatever tickles your pickle. All right. You ready? Stunning. I'm gonna wrap this up, so just stick around after we finish, and we'll wrap up off air. But once again, Kim, thank you so much for hanging out and for doing this. This was super fun, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed the episode, smash the thumbs up, hit subscribe below, hit the notification bell, so you know when the new drops. Follow us everywhere at BAOS Podcast, and check out the long form audio so you can hear wonderful individuals like Kim talk about craft beer every week. We drop every Wednesday morning for the pod, for the audio, and evening for the video. Guys, we'll see you in the next one. Get it in ya.